Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
Pecorine, congratulations to him. He's been named. He'll be inducted, I believe, this summer. But he's been named to the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame. Good for him. And today I had an opportunity to sit down with Pekka. And so, I love, by the way, saying, we had an opportunity to sit down. It makes me feel like Tony Soprano, Ian, to say that I had the,
with the boss.
What's that? Yeah, we had a little sit down.
Yeah.
We had a sit down. We had a little gabagool. And so we had our sit down. 3:00 today, we'll hear from Pekka and some interesting thoughts. Again, like Pekka's working for the team, so he's not going to come out and say, I think this guy should be the goalie instead of that guy. But I did kind of do some reading between the lines. I found that to be somewhat fascinating. But today is the NFL schedule release day. And I know the schedule has already been made. I know the Titans already have it. I know that it's not like there's any urgency of this guy has to make this play right now like it's a game. But man, am I nervous about that schedule. This is an important year for the schedule. You know what I think is hilarious is the way the NFL has found a way to kind of monetize these meaningless things. In 1970, whatever it was, around before the 1980 draft, Chet Simmons was the president of ESPN. And ESPN at this point was not owned by Disney. It was owned kind of independently. And it was a fledgling cable network, and most people didn't have cable. And so a lot of people didn't have ESPN. And at the time, ESPN was trying to survive, and they were showing slow-pitch softball on TV. It's a true story. They were showing slow-pitch softball on TV because they didn't have any inventory, and all the rights were taken up. Couldn't get the NFL rights. Those were taken up. Baseball rights taken up. ABC, NBC, CBS. They had all the rights. And so they're trying to figure out, how do we get people to watch this channel? So Chet Simmons, the president of ESPN, went to Pete Rozelle, the commissioner, who is known as the TV commissioner. And he went to Pete Rozelle and he said, what if we televised the league's annual selection meeting? Now, Ian, you know what the league's annual selection meeting is, right?
What do you mean?
That is the actual name for the draft.
Okay.
So they went to him and said, what if we did? And Pete Rozelle looked at Chet. The draft? You want to put the draft on TV? And again, the draft at this point is just a bunch of dudes in a ballroom sitting there saying, okay, we take Johnson. Okay, Dallas takes Johnson. All right, who's next? Chicago, you're up. And we want to put it on TV. And obviously we know what the drafts become. The schedule release, I think COVID really, injected the schedule release with some steroids. But I don't know about you. This is a big deal to me tonight. When that schedule release drops, this is big for the Titans. Now, here's what is, I guess according to Twitter. So who knows if this is true or not. Twitter said the Titans are going to be playing the Chargers on Thanksgiving. That wasn't true. Twitter said last week the Titans are going to be playing the Jets week 1. That wasn't true. So, again, take this with a humongous grain of salt. Here's what Twitter says. Twitter says the Titans are starting off at Chicago. And then week 2 against the Jets. Week 8 at Detroit. And week 11 against Minnesota. Ian, have you heard anything that I have not yet jotted down there?
Maybe a week 12 at Houston.
Seeing a
little rumor on that one.
Okay, let's put it down. Week 12 at Houston. Okay, so here's the deal with the schedule. Here's why I'm nervous. The key to this schedule is for the Titans to load up with bad teams early. Some teams, it doesn't matter. If you're a good team, and you're a good team, sometimes it's better to get good teams early. But the Titans this year need bad teams first. Patrick Mahomes' first year in 2018, which was really his second year, but his first year as a starter, the Chiefs played one team that ended up making the playoffs. That was the Chargers, who they played in week 1 in their first 5 games. So the first 5 weeks of the year, when Mahomes was throwing for a gazillion yards a game, and everybody around the country was like, what? Oh, yeah, that guy. I mean, he came out of nowhere because he didn't play the year before, and so he was going to be the starting quarterback. It would have been the same, and I know that they weren't drafted the same, but again, the same level of attention. Like if Sam Howell for the Commanders had come out, they started off 5-0 last year, and he was throwing it all over the yard. Because in the first 5 games, they played one good team. Thus, the Chiefs were 5-0 going into a Sunday night showdown in Foxborough against the Patriots, and they lost 43-40. But at that point, at 5-1 and playing New England tough, it's like, okay. I mean, there's no doubt Mahomes is for real. There's no doubt the Chiefs are for real. And this takes me back to, again, your quarterback. I mean, most people around the country don't even really think about your quarterback. Some people think he stinks. Some people think that he's going to be really good. Most of the people who think he's really good, they all live here. But with Levis, I mean, I'm not saying Levis is Mahomes or anything like that. But if you told me that Brian Callahan was a guru, and with these new wide receivers, and with Levis's arm, I mean, if you told me that they piled up with 4 bad teams out of the first 6 to begin the year, and I do think Chicago in week 1, I do think they're a bad team. But if you told me that they loaded up with bad teams to start the year, and Levis had a couple of Atlanta games back-to-back to start the season, now all of a sudden you're cooking with gas. Now we're looking at Detroit week 8 and saying, hey, you know what? With this team, with this coach, with this, with this new team, this team could be this, they could be that. Because how would Mahomes have done it? Nobody knows the answer to this. But how would Mahomes have done his rookie year or his first year, but first year as a starter, his second year in the league? How would it have gone if instead of one playoff team, the Chargers, and the Chargers were kind of a fringe playoff team that year. If you remember, they played their games in a soccer stadium. So if they instead had started off with New England, Seattle, the Rams, like how would that have gone for them? Think it would have been the same? Again, no way to know, but that's why it ended up being very beneficial for them. So with this Titans team, and make no mistake about it, like I'm not overly optimistic about the Titans this year. I think the Titans have some serious holes, and it's hard for me to get excited about the fact that the Titans still don't have a right tackle, no matter how much you guys say it doesn't matter. But this Titans team has talent on it. I mean, make no mistake about that. Now, I cannot tell you how much talent they have compared to last year. A lot of you think, look at this team, they're so much better than last year. But this team doesn't have Derrick Henry or Danico Autry on it. And Derrick Henry and Danico Autry were very, very good players. But let's say the Titans start, and again, we have the first 2 games in front of us, supposedly, at Chicago and versus the Jets. And the Jets are kind of a wild card because of Aaron Rodgers. But let's say that the Titans end up with New England in week 3 and Washington in week 4 and Jacksonville in week 5. They can win all those games. Every single one of those. They probably won't win those games. Every single one of them. But, I mean, they should beat New England. They should beat Washington. They could beat Jacksonville. And the reason I bring this up is because if that happens, and all of a sudden you're 4-0 to start the year, you're 4-1 before you get to the meat of the schedule, before you get to the good teams, before you get to Cincinnati or Buffalo, all of a sudden there's going to be a lot of optimism around here. There's going to be a lot of confidence around here. There's going to be a lot of success around here. And that, I think, breeds a successful season. That first year that the Titans were 13-3 and in the Super Bowl in 1999. That team started off 3-0. They played the Bengals week 1, won by 1 point on an Al Del Greco field goal as time expired, and that Bengals team was freaking awful. Week 2 against the expansion Browns had an unbelievable win. A storm-filled, unbelievable road victory at Jacksonville in week 3, and all of a sudden it was like, all right, this team's for real. It doesn't take long in this league. So when I saw Minnesota week 11, knowing that they're probably going to stick J.J. McCarthy out there at quarterback, I was like, oh, damn, because I want Minnesota early. I want New England early. I want Washington early. I'm glad Caleb Williams is early. I mean, give me the bad teams. Give them to me early so I can stack wins, so I can get confidence. And then I'd like a bad team in there late. Now, I don't want to stack it with 4 bad teams at the end because let's say you're going to make the playoffs, and we don't know if this team will make the playoffs or not. They probably won't, but we don't know. I would not mind, a Buffalo in there late, a Cincinnati in there late, a Green Bay in there late, just so it's like, okay, you get a little playoff competition in there at the end if you're going to end up making the playoffs. But then also give me a Scarbini late so that I can get myself onto the playoffs if I end up being that. So, I mean, because it's going to be way different for Will Levis and learning a new system and adjusting to a new offensive line. And it's going to be way different if the start of the season, again, we know it's Chicago and the Jets. But if after that it's Buffalo and Cincinnati and, I mean, there's some good teams on the schedule. I mean, there's some teeth in this schedule, particularly knowing that Houston might be pretty good. So, to me, this schedule is incredibly important. It is incredibly important that the Titans get bad teams, young quarterbacks. It is incredibly important that they get those things to start. So that's how we're starting today. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. There's a Twitter handle, the NFL schedule update at nerd. Whatever. NFL schedule update. Just search for it. And I now have the notifications for that, Ian.
Oh, boy.
And so my phone has just been cracking.
I was going to say, you might be boom, 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 boom.
But see, the problem is that, like, none of these are Titans related, but they kind of are, right? The Commanders at Cardinals week 4. That means the Commanders
can't play
in
the
week
Titans
4
week 4.
Can't play the Titans.
Yeah.
I want Washington early because they stink, and they're going to have a young quarterback. And so I want them early. But it won't be week 4. 615-737-1025. That's how we're starting. 615-737-1025. National TV expectations. Don't get your hopes up. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Let's talk Window Nation. That's right. When I say don't get your hopes up for national TV, I feel the opposite when it comes to Window Nation. Because right now it's Window Nation's semi-annual sale. Hear me out right now. If you've been thinking about replacing your windows, you need to hear me out about this Window Nation semi-annual sale. Because right now, get 50% off all windows. 50% off, along with no interest for 5 years. Plus, bonus savings when you schedule a consult today. And again, that is a no obligation in-home estimate. If your windows leak, get foggy or hot, or you're paying high utility bills, that's a big deal. With Window Nation semi-annual sale, you can replace your windows and save a big deal too. So schedule that no obligation in-home estimate now by calling 866-90Nation or visiting windownation.com. Again, 50% off all windows and no interest for 5 years plus bonus savings. Call 866-90Nation, windownation.com. Trevor Maddich, how important is it for the Titans that they get the bad teams early so they can get off to a good start next year?
That would be incredible. That would be incredible because every team has confidence going into the season. Then the bad teams get beaten down early, and their confidence in their ability to win is, as a group, individually, everybody thinks they're a Pro Bowler. But from a team standpoint, their ability to win as a team, that can be hammered down pretty quickly. And when you get the teams that are the lesser teams, yeah, they're the lesser teams, you know that, but you get into a rhythm of winning. And I got to tell you that when you lose repeatedly in a season where you've only got 4 or 5 or 6 wins, it's such a miserable experience. I mean, there's a physical sickness that sets in about you when you just keep losing like that with all the work that you put in.
That was Trevor yesterday saying, hey, the Titans need to get off to a good start. Like, the Titans need a good schedule. They need to get off to a good start. So during the break, I was looking at all the scheduling leaks on Twitter and things like that. And so now I'm starting to come up with, like, games that the Titans can't have. So, like, for instance, as of right now for week 3, we know that Chicago is week 1 on the road, and I don't have a problem with that. I don't think Chicago is going to be very good. The Jets week 2, they're a wild card given Aaron Rodgers. And, you know, the thing about the Jets have a talented team. Like, I don't like the Jets week 2. I just want you to know that. The Jets have a talented team. But it's such a fakakta organization that it's like, if you told me that the thing explodes by week 10, I wouldn't be surprised. So I'm not a huge fan of the Jets week 2. But, like, I want New England early. I want Washington early. Minnesota is supposedly week 11, which I hate because I want them early. I wouldn't mind Indy early, given that Anthony Richardson's returning from the injury. Well, as of right now, week 3 is not New England. It's not Indianapolis. Week 4 is not Washington. Not Green Bay. Glad to have that. Week 5, not Buffalo. Glad for that. But I think it is incredibly important for the Titans to start early. The other thing that is important about the schedule release is the primetime games. How many primetime games do we get this year? I expect one primetime game this year for the Titans. I think it'll be a Thursday nighter, which is considered to be the worst of all the potential primetime games. I think the way the slotting goes is Sunday Night Football number 1, 3:30 on Sunday number 2, Monday Night Football number 3, Thursday Night Football number 4. And so the two things, and let me put an asterisk when I say one primetime game, because the wild card in all of this is in December, and I could see some of this. In December, what the NFL does is they take a couple of games and they move them to Saturday and they play them as standalone games on NFL Network. I guess that technically counts as a primetime game, but they could put the Titans and the Commanders on in that spot. They put some of the crappiest games on the NFL Network slots. Ian, I don't count those Saturday standalone December where they decide midway through the year who's doing it. I don't count those as primetime games.
No, I don't think so.
So I think they're going to have one primetime game. And I think it's going to be a Thursday night game. I could theoretically see a Monday night game with a team like Green Bay or a team like Cincinnati. Now, I put Detroit this morning when I was going through, okay, who could be on Monday Night Football, but Detroit's not going to be on Monday Night Football because that is going to be week 8 on a Sunday. So take them out of it. But, I could see it in Monday Night Football if Monday Night Football the week before gets a primo game. Like, I believe Monday Night Football is getting the Super Bowl rematch again this year. It's like, okay, we gave you the Super Bowl rematch, now we're giving you the Titans. I remember years ago, 2018, the Titans played the Texans, and it was like Titans-Texans on Monday Night Football, but it was because they were putting the Rams and the Chiefs on like the next week, and that was the game of the year. So I looked at the Titans schedule, and I said, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being, again, the Chiefs-49ers rematch, or the Bengals and the Chiefs, and, the juicy ones. I said, if those are a 10, how many good game-ish do the Titans have? I don't think the Titans have any games that are a 10, a 9, an 8, a 7, a 6, or a 5. Like, I don't think they have any. I think they've got 3 games that I would rate as a 4 out of 10. Buffalo, Cincinnati, and Green Bay. And in the case of Green Bay, it's because Green Bay is a power brand team. You know, the Dallas Cowboys, for instance, they can't have a 1 out of 10 game. Dallas already starts at like 6 out of 10 because they're the Cowboys. Same with Kansas City because they have Patrick Mahomes. I think you've got 3 games that the networks would view 3 out of 10. So that's better than, terrible, but it's not great. At Detroit, at Miami, and the Jets. And the Jets, of course, because of Aaron Rodgers and it's New York and everything else. Then I think there are 3 games that are 2 out of 10, which means they're above the 1, which I'll describe the 1, what really defines a 1 in a second. I think that's at the Chargers, Houston, and at Houston. Because, again, they got quarterback. Everything else on the schedule, in my opinion, is a 1 out of 10, which is noon on CBS, and it is Beth Mowins or Spiro Ditas and Adam Archuleta or Andrew Catalan and James Lofton calling the game. Like, sometimes it's the F team. Like, remember that crew they put together for that Saints game in the opener last year? Chris Lewis called. It was like, who the hell is that? That is 90% of your schedule. Because, again, I think you've got 3 games at 4, 3 games at 3, and 3 games at 2. So that right there, that's 9 games. So we're talking the other half is all a 1 out of 10. Like, they are not putting Will Levis versus J.J. McCarthy on TV any time other than noon on CBS with Spiro Ditas or on Fox with Adam Amin and Mark Schlereth, the crew that called the Titans-Lions game last year. I mean, think about these games. Like, Jacksonville, no, they're not putting that on TV. Indy, no. Minnesota, no. New England, no. Chicago, no. Detroit, yes. Detroit, that game qualifies. Washington, no. And I will say this, too. I heard a caller call into the midday show that was like, Caleb Williams, that being his opener, that could be a prime time game. No. They're not putting Will Levis on national TV at this point in his career. Like, they may put him on once. They are not putting Will Levis in primetime windows consistently. I think the Jets have something like 6 primetime games in their first 11 because they'll put Aaron Rodgers on in primetime. And it's clear, by the way, that they're like, hey, let's get the Jets on early so that way if it's a gong show again, we don't have to worry about it late. Like how they had that Black Friday Jets-Dolphins game last year that nobody watched and Amazon paid $100 million for. So I think there's going to be one Thursday night game, but there also doesn't have to be one Thursday night. If you told me, when the Titans are good, the Titans average about 4 primetime games a year, 3 or 4 primetime games. 2 Monday nighters, a Thursday nighter, and a Sunday nighter. Well, there's no game on here that says Sunday Night Football. There's no Dallas. There's no Kansas City. There's no Sunday Night Football. No. If you told me that the Titans got 0 primetime TV games, I would say that that's more likely to be true than the opposite of, oh, no, the Titans have a Sunday Night Football game this year. If the Titans have a Sunday Night Football game this year, I will be freaking floored. Now, it should be noted that, again, they can flex Sunday night and they can flex Monday night now late in the season. But even then, I'd still be floored. The Titans are not in a big market. The Titans don't have a star quarterback, and the Titans are not very good. So don't expect primetime game. I'm going to say my official guess is 1 primetime game, a Thursday nighter. And I won't be surprised if you don't even get that. 615-737-1025. That's our phone number. A lot of you want to weigh in on the schedule, so we'll do that next. We'll also kind of see what other matchups, if anything else is leaking out there. Again, as of right now, what we've been told is at Chicago week 1 versus the Jets week 2, at Detroit week 8, versus Minnesota week 11, and at Houston in week 12. We'll kind of keep our eyes on what's what. Plus, there was a smoker of a take on the Robbie and Rex Road program this morning about the Titan schedule. Ian, I know you've heard this take because you obviously have the. That was a smoker of a take, was it not?
Little hot.
We'll get to that coming up next on your phone. Stillman & Company, 102.5-106.3 The Game. Let's talk Hiller. Plumbing, heating, cooling, and electrical. Those are my guys. Hiller, they are absolutely the best. Have you ever had a contractor come to your home and it just take all day? It literally take forever. You feel like you've wasted the entire day. I know I have. When you call Hiller, you don't have to camp out all day waiting because they give it to you right there, small windows, and they call you ahead of time, tell you the driver's on the way. They give you the little map in your phone, and I know this because I use Hiller myself. And be a happy camper this month with 0% interest financing for 24 months on select HVAC systems, generators, and tankless water heaters. Or take advantage of Hiller's $99 drain cleaning special. Take care of your home systems before the peak summer temperatures hit. Visit happyhiller.com today for details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today.
Two yards here to keep the game alive here. Tua in traffic. He'll be brought down in Tennessee. He's going to secure an incredible, improbable comeback victory and win for the road on the first time this year. Unreal. Landry, who was a factor in the fourth quarter, got to the quarterback, and this crowd is absolutely stunned the way this is finished.
That was the Monday Nighter last year, the Will Levis comeback victory. I said in the last segment, I think one primetime game Thursday night football. I said they're not putting Will Levis on TV. Apparently it took one segment, one commercial break for me to be completely wrong, Ian?
I mean, if you want to believe this report.
Give me the report. That, by the way, was the Monday Nighter against the Dolphins last year.
This is per Kyle Krabs at Grinding the Tape. The Dolphins are scheduled.
How many followers does he have?
Let's see. He has a blue check mark, but that doesn't really. 49.2 thousand.
It counts.
Almost 50. Host of Locked On Dolphins and Locked On NFL Scouting. Anyways, he says that the Dolphins are scheduled to host the Tennessee Titans in Week 4 of the 2024 NFL season on Monday Night Football, per multiple sources.
Monday Night Football? Week 4? Really? They're going to put the Titans on Monday Night Football. Now, I did see that Monday night. This is from the NFL scheduling update. Guess what? It's a doubleheader.
Oh, okay.
It's one of those for Cockta, one
of
game on
course, they
ABC.
put the Titans on the doubleheader one.
Always. I bet you it'll be Chris Fowler calling the game. I mean, this is apparently, according to the scheduling updater, Seahawks at Lions will be on at the same time Titans-Dolphins. I mean, it's still a primetime game. It's not the same.
Gotta count it, though.
It definitely counts, but it's definitely not the same as and look, Dolphins Week 4, that's not bad. I almost wonder if the Dolphins went to ESPN or went to the NFL and said, guys, we need a favor. We effed up that Titans game last year so bad. We got to make up for it on Monday Night Football. And please, if I know you're going to give us a bunch of primetime games this year because we're the Dolphins, even though our own fans don't give a rat's ass about us. But please, if you're going to do this, please give us a game that we can win, because too often we get put on primetime TV, and Tua is great at going, 26 for 34 for 347 yards and 4 touchdowns on the noon games on CBS. But every time we get put on primetime TV, Tua looks like absolute hot trash. So can we please get a game against a team that we might be able to beat, so that when we give Tua $55 million a year, we don't look like a bunch of idiots because he goes out there against the Chiefs and looks terrible in a primetime game. They must have just hands it. Please do this. Now, you want to know why I think this is good news for the Titans? As much as I don't, I want New England early. I want Washington early. I want the bad teams early. L'Jarius Sneed's knees should be fine going up against Tyreek Hill. They shouldn't be bad by week 4. If they're going to be bad, they probably won't be bad by week 4.
Oh, that'd be fun to watch.
All right, let's save the smoker of a Robbie and Rex road take for a little bit down the road, simply because I want to get to your phones, and so we'll do that. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Michael says, you don't like Spiro Ditas? You're right about the Beth Mowins games, but why are you trashing the Spiro Ditas games? Number one, let me say this. I am not trashing Spiro Ditas and Adam Archuleta. I think they do an okay job. But to me, it is the sign that you stink when all of your games are with the worst announcing crews. I mean, when I was a kid, Solomon Wilcots, and I love Solly now, but Solomon Wilcots and Ian Eagle used to be the worst. Like, that was the F crew on CBS, and the Titans got them pretty much every week. And so that was a sign that you're not viewed favorably, that you're not getting any good announcers. It's like, that's why Al Michaels hates Thursday Night Football so much, because when Al was doing Sunday Night Football, Al got every good game. And now Al's doing Thursday Night Football, and it's like, and here we are at this terrible game for some football. Because for the last 30 years, Al's been doing the best game. The crew that I liked, and CBS broke them up, and I don't know if it was because they didn't like each other, if CBS, they got too smart in the room and outthought themselves. The crew I liked was Andrew Catalon and James Lofton. Like, I got used to them calling the Titans every Sunday. I thought they were great. And it was like, in that 2022 season, Andrew Catalon and James Lofton called the Titans so much on CBS that it was like they knew the Titans. A lot of times these schmoes are out-of-town shooters. They come in here, they call the game. They don't know what they're doing. They just read the game notes. That's it. They sat down and talked to the coach for an hour. That's it. But Andrew Catalon and James Lofton, because they called like 8 and like a 10-game period in 2022, they knew the Titans like we knew the Titans. And I like that a lot. For whatever, make of that what you will. One text says, who cares about the schedule? The Titans are going to be. I can tell you right now, people care about the schedule. People, this is, I know. I used to work with Bob Valvano in Louisville. Bobby V's an old school guy, great radio host. Jim Valvano's brother. Bobby V was an old school guy. And Bobby V used to think that the televised draft was so stupid. He said, so you mean to tell me you're going to get 500,000 people to congregate in an area just to watch people put on ball caps? Yes. And he, what? The schedule release is the same thing. People care. Skyler says Titans versus Bengals would be a cool primetime game for Callahan, Awuzie, and Tyler Boyd, and hopefully it would be a good game. So when you think about a primetime game, like most people around the country don't know who's coaching the Titans. I'm just being honest with you. It's like, hey, who's the coach of the Titans? That's a good question. Didn't the Boston show, didn't Felger call him something like when they hired him? Because he was talking about the gurus or whatever it may be. And, I don't know. Make of it what you will. One texter says, I think the Titans are going to play the Colts on Thursday Night Football at Nissan Stadium. That has a very Thursday night feel to it. Titans and Colts. Mike says 0 primetime games. Wrong on that one, Mike. Just like I was. Without Henry, this team won't be sexy for the networks. Early Sunday games all year. So, Derrick Henry absolutely was your biggest needle mover. And with him out, and Vrabel was kind of a needle mover too, but I still don't think they really truly moved it that much. But that's why none of your games are the high-profile kind of games. The kind of games, like going back to that Brian Callahan or Chidobe Awuzie playing the Bengals the kind of games that are like, oh no, this is the kind of game that they want to put on TV is Aaron Rodgers playing the Packers. Like that is, that's a good, Shaq and Kobe the first time. Like that's TV. Brian Callahan playing the Bengals is not TV. That's why the first Sunday Night Football game, now it's lost a little bit of its luster because it was a playoff game last year, but the first Sunday Night Football game this year, Matthew Stafford versus Jared Goff. It's like, let's see that trade again and all that drama and everything else. Robert in Nashville says, I love schedule release day. Our family chooses one away game to go to every year, not knowing the dates that we have available to us. Dinner tonight is a big freaking deal as long as it's not Buffalo again. Buffalo, Robert says, is terrible. I'm trying to think. I'm looking right here at the opponents. If I was to pick a road game to go to, as a fan. See, I go to the Charger game because I want to go to that stadium. And I wanted to go a couple years ago and couldn't make it happen, some scheduling issues. And then I ended up, paying a gazillion dollars to go to Green Bay. And it was fun. And that was the last night the Titans were good. But the Charger game that year was the game I wanted to go to because I wanted to see that stadium. And I have to assume that Charger prices are not the same as Rams prices. So I wouldn't mind going to SoFi for the game against the Chargers. Do we have any leaks as to when that Charger game may be, Ian?
Not that I've seen.
Okay. So I am fascinated by when I may have to go to that one because I've never been to SoFi Stadium. Andrew says, only Titan, folks. Henry was not a primetime draw. Other fan bases do not sit around the TV and watch 30 runs. So this reminds me of, the Titans were off of Sunday Night Football between the years of 2009 and 2018. They did not appear on Sunday Night Football one time. And I am scared to death that we are headed for the dark ages again. But, again, could be here nor there. Who knows? But I say that because at the end of the 2016 season, it was looking like there was a chance that the Titans and the Texans could be one of those winner-take-all for the division games. And again, the Titans had not been on Sunday Night Football for 7 years at this point, and I'm like, Sunday Night Football, could we get it, Floyd? Do you think it could happen? And that week, the Texans benched Brock Osweiler for Tom Savage. And he said, no, you're not, no. I said, what do you mean? He goes, they could have talked themselves into Texans-Titans. Hey, Mariota won the Heisman Trophy. He's doing okay. They're having a good year. Like, okay, we can do that. He said they're not putting Mariota Tom Savage on TV. When it comes to Derrick Henry, I agree with you. I don't think it's like, we got to put the Derrick Henry game on like it's the Dallas Cowboys. But I do think that it's like, okay, if it's a game against the Ravens with Lamar Jackson, or if it's a game against the Bengals with Joe Burrow, or if it's a game against the Chiefs with Mahomes, it's like, we can put that on TV. Derrick Henry and Mahomes, we can do that. And I think you've kind of lost a little bit of that now. Of course the Titans are getting the Monday night game on a doubleheader night. Of course they are. I mean, it's almost like the same formula as last year. Of course they are. Joey from Bellevue says, I take my son to one road game a year. He wants Chicago or Detroit. I'll be in Germany, so Chicago won't work, so we'll go to Detroit. I mean, I have heard the story in Detroit is that they have jacked the ticket prices up so high because they're good again. And so, I mean, Chicago might be a hefty ticket because all the Chicago people want to see Caleb Williams make his debut. But, man, Detroit, who would have thought going to Detroit to watch the Lions was going to be an expensive venture? All right, Chris Sanders joins us next. The importance of starting fast. What does Chris make of that? He's been on teams that did, and he's been on teams that haven't. We'll do that coming up. Stillman and Company, Pecorine, 3 o'clock, right here, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And let's tell all the fine folks that the Nashville's best deal is Bavarian Beer House, conveniently located at Opry Mills Mall. Enjoy beer, food, music, and fun at Nashville's only authentic German beer hall, where it's Oktoberfest every day. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals now to get a $50 gift card for only $25 to Bavarian Beer House while supplies last. Stillman and Company schedule release day. By the way, Pecorine will join us at the top, or I had to sit down this morning with Pecorine. 3 o'clock, we'll have that. We touched on the goalies and all kinds of stuff. And somebody texts into the text line and says, I promise we fans don't care about the schedule. Ian, do you buy that the fans don't care about the schedule?
No, I think some fans care.
I think the fans care about the schedule. I care about the schedule because I'm telling you right now that I personally, I want to start early. We know the first game at Chicago versus the Jets week 2, reportedly at Miami on Monday Night Football week 4. Chris Sanders joins us on the program. Chris, knowing what you know from your experience, how important is it, and I know the schedule's already made, but when the draw comes, how important is it for the Titans to get a good schedule, bad teams early, young quarterback, so that they can get a fast start going this season?
Yeah, you want to get a fast start because, look at the excitement that you have the Tennessee Titans coming in. Look at the quarterback situation. You want to see what Will Levis is going to do, and then also you want to see what Sweat does on the other side. So, when you got the schedule coming out and you might have some easy teams first, then it kind of gives the fans and it gives the momentum that the Tennessee Titans need because they had a bad taste in their mouth last year.
Chris, when you were a player,
sure,
did you when the schedule came out, did you look at it like, okay, we want to play, we don't want to play in the cold weather,
right.
we want to play here? How did you look at it as a player?
I don't really look at it that way. I just looked at it and see if we were going to play on Thanksgiving because, as a young kid, I've always wanted to play on Thanksgiving. And I think I can't remember. I think it was in 1998. We played Dallas on Thanksgiving. So, I wouldn't look at the schedule. Well, it's cold, it's hot on this day. I just looked to see if we were going to play on Thanksgiving, and we actually did in 1998.
So, with that being said, right now, again, reportedly, it's the Titans have one primetime game at Miami week 4. Although it is apparently one of those split doubleheaders where the Monday night doubleheader. What do you make of the Titans getting that primetime game and maybe other primetime? Do you expect the Titans to be on primetime more than once, given the quarterback and the state of the team?
I think so because if you look at, I know last year the Titans had a bad taste in their mouths and they had a bad season, but look at some of the big names that you have, and there's a lot of question marks. There's a question mark at quarterback. Can Will Levis do it? Then you talk about the Sweat guy from the D tackle from Texas. You got that situation. Then you got some cornerbacks that are really really good, but can they stay healthy? You got Snead and you got Awuzie. So there's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of things that a lot of people want to see. So put them on prime time to see what they can do because there's some big names on this Tennessee Titans team.
Chris Sanders is with us on the program. Chris, rookie minicamp was last week. Everybody got all worked up because I said J.C. Latham looks like a right tackle, not a left tackle, which has nothing to do with the fact that I don't think he can play left tackle, but he just has the body, of I believe, of a right tackle.
What does that mean, though?
What's it mean? Well, right tackles are built differently than left tackles. Right tackles are built with broader shoulders, bigger butts, longer waists, and they are, they're supposed to get out and run block like a John Runyon. Yeah. And then the left tackle is supposed to be, leaner, more athletic, move the feet, kind of like, a Taylor Lewan type. The average of between 2021 and 2023, there were 3 tackles that were taken in the top 10 that were right tackles, 3 in the top 10 that were left tackles. The average weight of the left tackles is 315. The average weight of the right tackles is 335. And so Latham is more built like a right tackle than he is built like a left tackle. Doesn't mean he can't play left tackle. It's just reality there. But the one I actually wanted to ask you about was Sweat. Because he did not look as fat, in my opinion, as I thought he was going to be, given all the talk about how fat he is. So with that being said, what do you make of that? And I looked up Warren Sapp's playing weight at 303. There's no way Warren Sapp played at that. What do we make of Sweat and his weight and where they go from here with that?
I think it's all on him. Everybody's been talking about it in the draft, and everybody's been talking to see if he got drafted with the Tennessee Titans. They talked about his weight. So I know he said in his press conference that he doesn't have nothing to prove to anybody, but in actuality he does. I know he's a great player at Texas, and I know that he got drafted with the Tennessee Titans, and everybody's talking about his weight. So I think that, everybody talks about your first impression is the best way to show somebody that you're serious. And I think with him coming in looking in pretty good shape, not looking as big as we thought he is, I think it puts a great taste, and not just in the coach's mouth, but in your mouth, and also the fans out there knowing that he's coming in shape.
Do you think Sweat and Latham are prepared for how much pressure is going to be on them to perform right away?
You know what, Jared? That's a great question because it is a lot of pressure. I mean, you got a second round and a first rounder, and just say if a guy got drafted in the fifth round, it's not going to be as much pressure as a second and a first round. Because the thing about it is, you know, when you get drafted that high, you're expected to play. You're expected to be an impact player, and right away they're going to have to play. I mean, Sweat is going to have to come out and show that he is a great D tackle. And then you got a situation with Latham. I don't know if you put in right tackle, left tackle, but when you're drafted in the first round and you get drafted at the 7th pick, you're not expected to sit on the bench. You're expected to play, not just play, but play at a high level. So, yes, it's a lot of pressure on these kids, but at the end of the day, if they just listen to their coaches and let the game come to them, I think they'll be okay.
Okay, we've got another scheduling leak apparently, Chris.
Oh, what?
Robbie Stanley just texted me. Ian, have you seen this?
Uh-oh, what is it?
I'm not sure.
So Robbie's texted me and says Packers-Titans week 3.
Have not.
Ooh, where at?
That would be at home. So what you're looking at right now to start the season, at Chicago, Caleb Williams' first game, Jets at home in week 2, Packers at home in week 3, at Miami Monday Night Football week 4. What do you think of that start? Again, Chicago, Jets, Packers, Dolphins.
That's a monster right there. I mean, you know, Chicago's going to be better than last year with the situation with the quarterback. Then you got the Jets where they had a nasty defense, and you know you got Rodgers coming back, and then you got the Packers that played at a high level and went to the playoffs last year. And then you got Miami that's kind of loaded with speed on offense. So yeah, I mean it's tough right out the box, and this is the reason why I'm kind of glad the schedule's like this is because it's going to show you where the Tennessee Titans are at. Are they going to be good? Or are they going to be bad? Because you're going against some pretty doggone good teams.
Well, I mean, I don't think that that's like a monster to begin the year.
That's
I think
a monster, dude.
Well, okay, Chicago, I mean, a rookie quarterback making his first start, I don't.
Yeah, but it's their place, though. I mean, it's at their place. Now, if it was at our place, I'd be like, we'll crush them.
Is Chicago a hard place to play at?
Yes. Yeah, but you got to understand the hoopla. You got the quarterback situation. You got a new era. They're trying to start fresh, and they want to give the fans, you know, a good taste in their mouth if they come out and get their first win. So they're going to be hyped. The fans are going to be incredibly loud. So that's going to be a tough place to play.
The Jets week 2, you know, the Jets are kind of a wild card, right? Because they were so bad last year, but Rodgers is back, but they're also kind of a dumpster fire there. Packers week 3, Packers got hot at the end of last year. The Packers, you know, it looks like they have a quarterback.
Yep.
And then Dolphins week 4, Titans went to Miami on Monday Night Football last year and won, which means the Dolphins will take you seriously. But, you know, I'm not the biggest Tua fan. My thing here, Chris, is that there is no Cincinnati early. There's no Buffalo early. There's no Houston early. You know, none of these teams I think are Super Bowl contenders.
Right.
And I think that's a good, you know, I think that's good for them early on.
Yeah, it is, but you got to look at, I mean, last year, you know, Cincinnati was okay. All those teams you named were okay. But, you know, when you start the season, there's different identities on this team. So we can't really go back from last year, okay, they're going to be this, they're going to be that, because they got new players. You know, some of these teams got new coaches. They're kind of trying to transform the identity. So we really don't really know in that situation. But if you look at those 4 teams that you just named, I know you're like, well, they're okay. But I'm telling you, man, these first 4 games, that's a monster. I mean, if the Tennessee Titans can split that or even go 3-1, then also play those teams, those harder teams later on down the road, then now you're working with something. So it's really going to show what the Tennessee Titans are at.
Okay, how about this then? Titans at Chicago. Who do you take?
Dang. I say Chicago.
Titans versus Jets at home.
Titans.
Really?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay. Titans at home versus the Packers week 3.
Titans.
Titans at Miami Monday Night Football week 4.
Miami.
So you think they're going to win the home games and lose the road games?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a little surprised by that. Chris Sanders. Well, I mean, like, Chicago, what's special about Chicago?
Okay,
but the Jets have Aaron Rodgers and a good defense.
Okay, let me give you a perfect example. Okay.
The Packers might be the best of those 4 teams.
Hold on, let me tell you about Chicago. Let me give you a perfect example. Okay, in 1999, the year we went to the Super Bowl, right? We played Cincinnati, and the year before that, I think we were like 9-7. The year before that, 8-8. All those bad years, But then all of a sudden we get into the stadium, new genre, new uniforms, new all things, and everybody's excited. So we played at a higher level as opposed to it being a 6 or 7 game because we wanted to make sure that we put a good taste in the Titans fans' mouth and come out with a win. That's the same thing with the Chicago. New quarterback, new regime, new attitude, new identity, all these things that you want to start fast. So on all this schedule, the 4 teams that you named, I think Chicago's going to be the toughest one is because it's the first game.
Not a bad take. Chris Sanders, as always on the program.
Appreciate
Chris,
you, brother. Love you, man.
Love you. Take
Okay,
care.
brother.
We'll keep you updated on the schedule.
Yes, sir.
As again, as of right now, what we have: Week 1 at Chicago, Week 2 versus the Jets, Week 3 Packers at home, Week 4 Monday Night Football doubleheader at Miami, Week 8 at Detroit, Week 11 versus Minnesota at home, Week 12 at Houston. So no AFC South in the first month, and I would argue, I don't think the Packers are a Super Bowl contender, so no Super Bowl contenders in the first 4. And no elite quarterbacks outside of, if you count Rodgers as an elite quarterback in the first 4. But Chris does make a good point about Chicago. Okay. Today, Pecorine got inducted into the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame. And afterwards, he and I sat down for a while, and we talked about, his job with the Predators, but also what's he think about the Soros situation, what's he think about the Askarov situation. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Today, the Predators had a very, I was surprised when they sent an email saying, hey, we're going to have our pre-draft press conference in May when the draft is not until the end of July. But, I think now's when they get all the scouts together and everything else. And that does include one of their newest scouts, Pekka Rinne. And so during today's, press availability, Pekka Rinne was honored by Brad Willis of the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame as the newest recipient or the newest inductee into the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame. And I'm very, very happy for Pekka. I think it's a slam dunk, no doubt, no brainer. But with all the goalie chatter going on, I'm like, who better to talk about Saros and where he sees that situation and Askarov and where he sees that situation than Pekka Rinne himself. So I had an opportunity earlier today to sit down with Pekka, and of course we started by congratulating him on being the newest inductee to the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame. All right, first off, Pekka Rinne, congratulations being named to the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame. How many honors is this now for you since you've retired from the NHL?
Let's count. It's the jersey, statue, and now this. It's pretty unreal.
So what exactly, this role you're in, this scouting role, this development, what exactly is your job now with the Predators?
Well, during the season, it's kind of a combination of both. I do bunch of scouting, just identifying next year's draft and getting to know, especially this year, the 06 class and late 05 born goalies. And but at the same time, I have a couple of Juha Jatkola in Finland, playing in Finland, who's our prospect, and then Konstantin Volkov, who's playing in Moscow in KHL. So those guys are kind of on my plate. And then in North America, Jason Barron, who's the goalie coach for Milwaukee Admirals, he's taking care of the North American prospects. So and then we split also. We kind of cross our information and just try. But biggest thing is trying to build a relationship. And I try to take it, especially with these younger guys. When we draft them, I almost try to be a mentor and trying to kind of be there, just let them know that I'm here for you and try to work with their goalie coaches as well, because that's also like a sensitive area that you don't want to step on anybody's toes. So you got to, at the same time, you got to work with their own goalie coaches, and so you're not going to be just the one that you're coming and bowl everything out of your way. That I'm coming from NHL and I exactly. So I'm just trying to. But that's been cool, and I like that there's a kind of mixture of those two kind of job descriptions, I guess.
Pekka, let's start with Saros. I want to talk about the two goalies, but you've been in a situation where you wanted to be a Predator. You decided to be a Predator for your entire career, but the negotiations are the negotiations. And I kind of wonder, given where he is in his career, knowing that there is somebody else in the pipeline there, if you were in that situation, would that affect you of saying, hey, I want to get a deal done, or hey, I've got to do what's in the best interest of me? Or how would you approach, the uncomfortable business side of things?
I think you got to think about yourself and your family, where you feel most comfortable. That at least that's how I was thinking about it when I was going through it. And of course, there's also the sports side of it. But I always had a big belief in our team and our organization, and it was, at the time, it was the best decision for me and for my family to stay here. And I had no question in my mind. It was a dream come true, and I just have a feeling that it's the same thing for Juice. Hopefully everything goes smooth, but obviously I can't speak, speak for Jussi, but I, it's everybody kind of handles their own way. But I know and Jussi really well, and what kind of person he is, and what kind of things he values, and he's such a humble down to earth guy that he's already kind of setting his roots here as a pro athlete. So I have no question in my head that he wants to be here. And
Do you think if you were in his spot and you signed an extension that you would understand that, hey, Askarov's coming up behind me the way he kind of came up, but it was later in your career that he was coming up behind you. How does a goalie look at that? Because there's only one starting goalie per team.
it's funny though, like, but we are also competitive that you also want that challenge, that kind of driving force behind that. Like I'm 100% sure that Jussi was able to extend my career because like that made me work hardest that I've ever worked.
So even though you guys were good friends, it certainly lit a fire under your ass.
Yeah, like exactly, because like you recognize talent, like who's good, like as a player, who's gonna like take your spot or anything like that. So that was for me the best thing that happened was when Jussi came over, and eventually he took my job. But you need to have a little bit of that behind you, like in the back of your head, that every day, like you gotta come to work. You gotta, there's other guy breathing on your neck, and that's one day that's gonna happen. But right now we're in an interesting situation in our organization because we obviously we want to keep Jussi here, but then we also have Aski coming up from the minors, and he's getting to an age where he's improving every single year, and he's showing more and more that he's ready for a bigger role. And so I think it's great thing for organization, but it's a good thing for Jussi too,
So in the case of Askarov, there's a lot of talk about, okay, is he ready now? He's 21 years old. I do wonder this from your perspective because you spent time in Milwaukee. How important is the extra time in Milwaukee as opposed to, well, he's doing well in Milwaukee, now bring him up here and make him the starting goalie for the Predators?
It's so important. Like at the time when you're a player, like I played 3 years in Milwaukee, and I thought after my first year that I'm ready to play in the NHL, and then I got sent down, played my second year, and I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm ready. And then I got sent down the third time, and it was so hard, but looking back, it was so good for me. I got to play all those 3 years as a number one goalie, and got to play a lot, got to make a lot of mistakes, got kind of got it out of my system, and when I finally got up, I was already older than than these guys at the time, but like Aski or but I was ready. So like I don't know, like my career could have been totally different without those years in Milwaukee. So but I understand totally that it can be really challenging as a player too. Like, just to take the news, for example, after training camp that you're going to get sent down. It feels like your world is crashing, and you work all this time to, get yourself ready, and you think you've kind of paid your dues and you've done everything and you're ready to go, and then, but I wish at that age you would have a little bit of a crystal ball and you could, age travel, time travel a little bit. And
so that you would know that one day I'll be in the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame, so it'll be okay.
No, but exactly. Then you look back and you're like, oh my God, like it was so important for me to play those years. And I think for Aski, I really hope that he understands that at the moment.
Last one for you. This is kind of a complicated thing here in Nashville that we discuss a lot, but I think the 2017 run was in large part because of you, in terms of the Chicago series and Anaheim series and the stealing games. UC has not won a playoff series yet, and so I do wonder, as a goalie, how personally do you take winning in the playoffs and that, as opposed to, well, it's a team sport, and how much does the goalie put that on themselves?
I mean, a lot, and I, knowing Yusi's personality too, like he's so hard on himself, and he takes a lot of ownership on this team, and he it doesn't matter the game. He always thinks that he could have been the difference, and I know how he feels. So, and he has the mentality of a winner. So, I have no doubt in my head that those days are still ahead when he's gonna steal a series for us and all of a sudden gets on a roll. But yeah, I mean, I feel like those days are still ahead.
Pekka, congratulations once again, and get back to scouting because the draft's coming up here.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
That was Pekka Rinne earlier today. Again, congratulations to him for making it to the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame. So there was kind of one thing that he dropped in there. Because, again, I've been very staunch that, hey, when it comes to Saros, I think that now you got to make the move to Askarov. There was one thing that he said that kind of gave me a vibe. He's not going to come out and say it, but it kind of gave me a vibe to where maybe he feels like Askarov is. We'll get to that next. And your reaction, 615-737-1025. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Right now we're in an interesting situation in our organization because, we obviously we want to keep Jussi here, but then we also have Aski coming up from the minors, and he's getting to an age where he's improving every single year, and showing more and more that he's ready for a bigger role. And so I think it's a great thing for organization, but it's a good thing for UC too.
That was Pekka Rinne earlier today. And again, he didn't say it. Because he says, look, we're in an interesting spot where more and more Askarov showing that he's getting ready for the NHL. But he didn't say it, but it was the vibe I got from talking to Rinne today. When he brought up the crystal ball, when I asked about Milwaukee, and I said, well, hey, he's 21 years old, but hey, bring him up, And Pekka's like, when I played and I got sent back to Milwaukee, apparently Pekka spent 3 years in Milwaukee. He said, when I got sent back to Milwaukee, I was miserable. Talking about how down he was on it and everything. And said, I wish I could have had a crystal ball. Basically, Pekka saying, it was good for me that I got sent down to Milwaukee even when I thought I was ready. And it was kind of like he wants Askarov to see that of like, hey, I know, like you think you're ready right now for the NHL. I know. Because the stats say, like I remember looking this up before Arthur Sheloff started that game 4 that ended up being what, he hasn't not played since then. And I looked up his AHL stats, and Askarov's stats are 10 times better than Sheloff's stats this year in the AHL. But Pekka's talking about, I wish that I had had a crystal ball because of what those extra years in Milwaukee meant. And then we talk about Barry talking about over-marinating the goaltender, and it's just a vibe that I get. And I really wonder if Willie and Chris Mason are, like, if they know this, again, they're with the team. Like, if they know this, they're saying it but not saying it. I wonder if Pekka was saying it but not saying it, of like, Askarov needs emotionally more time. Like, he's showing physically he can play. He's showing that he can play in the NHL right now. But the idea of sticking him out there is dangerous where he is emotionally. Again, Pekka saying, I wish I had the crystal ball so that I knew how important being in Milwaukee was for me. So I'm starting to be swayed a little bit that even though they drafted him 4 freaking years ago, that he may not be emotionally ready to be a starting goalie in the NHL. Well, now that causes a problem. And here's the reason why this is a problem is because Saros' contract is up at the end of next year, which essentially means it's up this year. Because you have to make the decision as to whether or not you're going to extend him. And if you extend him, it's going to be 7 or 8 years, and he's probably going to want a no move. So I see 4 options here, but I really only see 2 viable options. The first option is go all in on Saros. There is no go all in on Saros for a 7-year deal with a no move. And then, we're going to bring Askarov along the way, and he'll sit the bench for 8 years before we turn it over. No. If you go all in on Saros, you're trading Askarov. And who knows what you'll get, because once you give Saros a 7-year contract extension or an 8-year contract extension with a full no movement, the second you do that, everybody that you call knows that, hey, that young goalie that you've got, you're going to have to trade him. So if you go all in on Saros, he's going to want a no move, and his no movement is going to be I'm the guy card. And if you do that, then you're trading Askarov. I don't know how I feel about that. Number 2 is go all in on Askarov and trade Saros before the draft and then sign what I would call a bridge goalie. The one that Willie keeps bitching about. Who? As if I'm supposed to say that, they'll sign Martin Brodeur for 2 years at $4 million a crack. No, it's going to be a guy like Kevin Lankinen. It's going to be a guy like Ilya Samsonov. Well, he's awful. I know. He's a bridge. Just like in football, Sam Darnold is a bridge quarterback. Jacoby Brissett is a bridge quarterback. You'd be signing a bridge goalie. So you sign Lankinen. You go all in on Askarov. Maybe Askarov has to go back to Milwaukee, like Pekka said. He's got to develop, he's got to, what's important long term, which means Lankinen and some other Scarbini, that's your backup next year. And it's not as promising. But because, again, you're going all in on Askarov long term, you've made the move and you traded Saros at the draft so you could get the maximum value in return. The other two options are going half in, right? So you don't extend Saros thinking, okay, maybe Askarov needs one more year at Milwaukee. Then he would be 23 years old when he'd be ready for prime time, and he will have had the same 3 years at Milwaukee that Pekka had. So you start the year with Saros on your team, but you don't extend him. If they do that, they'll say, well, that's okay, we can trade him at the deadline. But they're not going to do that. They're going to win too many games. If Saros is the goalie, they're going to win too many games that when they get to the deadline, it's like, well, we're in third place right now in the Central Division, so why we're 8 points clear of a playoff spot, why would we trade the goalie? Like, that is a legitimate possibility, and then they keep Saros, and then they lose him for nothing, or they try to re-sign him, and they end up giving him the same deal that that would have been going all in on him, but you wasted around and whatever. I don't like that option. I cannot foresee the Predators. I mean, look, Barry's got some stones, but I could not foresee the Predators being, again, 6 points clear of a playoff spot, 8 points clear of a playoff spot. Hell, they could be 2 points back of a playoff spot. And I could not see, I just don't see the way this organization does business. I can't see Barry at the trade deadline saying, yeah, we were trying to get Saros to sign a 4-year deal with no movement because ultimately we're going to want to move him so that Askarov can be the goalie long term. So we dealt him, even though we were 6 points clear of a playoff spot, we dealt him to New Jersey for a first-round pick, and their starting goalie who's average in return. I can't see Barry doing that in the middle of a season. So I really don't think that's an option. And then I think the other option is to try to negotiate with Saros a 3 or 4 year contract with a higher AAV. So I think if they go 7 or 8, we're talking about probably 7.5 to 7.85 for Saros. Like, he'll be short of $8 million because that's why you get the longer deal, but he'll still get a nice little raise. But he's going to want to no move if you do the 7 or 8 years. If you go to him and say, hey, we want a 3 or 4 year deal and we're not giving you a no movement, he knows why you're doing that. So now you're going to have to pay him $9 million, $9.5 million, or something stupid like that in order to get him to accept a deal that is not advantageous to him. You're going up to him saying, hey, we're going to offer you a 4-year deal, a 4-year extension with no movement, a.k.a. we could trade you. Screw that. I'll just go to the market. So I really don't like the fact that the vibe that I got from Pekka was this sense that, like, Askarov's got the talent. Like, he could be the guy. But you need that extra time down there. Like, you need that extra time. Like, because then what that does is it forces your hand as to what you're going to do with Saros. Like, if you're going to sign him, it's going to have to be for 7 or 8 years, and now you're done with Askarov. So to me, again, I told you there are 4 options. I think there's really 2. You either go all in on Saros, you give him the deal, 7 or 8 years. The AAV's got to be lower than 8. That's the part. That's the deal for Saros. Like, that's what the Predators get out of this. We'll give you 7 years. We'll give you a no move, but you got to take 7.65. You got to take 7.5. You're not getting to Carey Price. You're not getting to Connor Hellebuck's contract, but you're going to be the guy here, and you'll get a no move, and we're going to end up trading the goalie. Or you go all in on the other guy, you trade Saros, and you sign a bridge goalie. It's got to be one or the other. But the idea of, just flip it over to Askarov, I am starting to get the vibe. I got the vibe in that conversation with Pekka. And again, he didn't say it. It's just the vibe I got. That that may not be what's best for Askarov right now. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones on that. 615-737-1025 here in the text line. We'll hit your phones. We'll do that. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. If you were in that situation, would that affect you of saying, hey, I want to get a deal done, or hey, I've got to do what's in the best interest of me? Or how would you approach, the uncomfortable business side of things?
I think you got to think about yourself and your family, where you feel most comfortable. That at least that's how I was thinking about it when I was going through it. And of course, there's also the sports side of it. But I always had a big belief in our team and our organization, and it was at the time it was the best decision for me and for my family to stay here, and I had no question in my mind. It was a dream come true, and I just have a feeling that it's the same thing for Juice. Hopefully everything goes smooth, but obviously I can't speak for Jussi, but I, it's everybody kind of handles their own way. But I know and Jussi really well, and what kind of person he is, and what kind of things he values, and he's such a humble, down to earth guy that he's already kind of setting his roots here as a pro athlete. So I have no question in my head that he wants to be here.
That was Pecorine today. So, that whole answer, the translation I get from that, he says, hey, in my situation, I had to think about myself and my family. AKA, I'm not a selfish guy, but when it comes to negotiating, You have to think about yourself and your family. You have to think about you first. Now, a lot of times that means money. In this case with Saros, I think it means years and the no movement. Because, again, in a perfect world, UC Saros would have 3 years left on his contract or 2 years left on his contract, and they really could bring Askarov along slowly. Maybe he's the backup next year. Maybe he gets a full year, in Milwaukee and then takes over for Saros because Saros has the extra year. But you have to make a decision by the draft. And again, the only leverage that Saros has, if Saros is doing what's in the best interest for him and his family, it's going to be the long term with the no move that forces the Predators to say when they sign that contract, you're the guy. Not you're the guy right now, but you're the guy. There is no you're the guy right now. He might be the guy in the future contract. Saros will not sign that. Because, again, like Pekka said, you got to do what's best for yourself and your family. At least that's how Pekka felt when he entered negotiations. Now, he didn't have a UC Saros behind him. But that is where Saros sits right now. The other thing, when Pekka talked about the humble values, I kind of took that to mean that, look, Saros isn't looking to break the bank. Saros isn't looking to take so much of the cap that it hurts the team. Saros isn't all about the money. Saros is about winning. Saros is all the things we already knew. That, if you do invest in him, he's the right kind of guy to invest in. Now he's the right kind of player to invest in. That's kind of the crux of the issue here, which Pekka said in the interview, he thinks Saros' best days are ahead of him. He thinks he's going to steal series in the future. I need you to start. I needed you to steal him last month. I needed you to win a series for me so I could say, okay, you can do it. Because now I'm paying you saying, okay, you can do it, when I don't know if you can, because in the opportunities you've had to do it, you didn't do it. And that's, again, kind of the leap of faith, one way or another that you take. But to me, it's either you all in one way or all in the other. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Colin has been waiting patiently and is up next here on Stillman and Company. Thank you for calling. What's up, Colin?
What's going on, Jared? First off, let me just say that it is always funny to me when Preds media tries to dump on you. Dude, you have a great radio show. Keep doing your thing.
Thanks, Colin.
Secondly, I think the ideal situation, you can tell me whether it's right or wrong, and how to deal with this goalie situation. You move off the Saros. You get an asset back. It may not be full value because you're dealing with paying a goalie big money, but you send him to a team who has the opportunity to win a cup right away at a low deal, 1-year contract. You get something back, but it resets your timeline with Askarov to build a team around him. On top of that, people forget that Lankinen had similar stats to Saros all year. You could ride with Askarov and Lankinen and have a pretty solid team throughout the year. What do you think?
So I have a hard time believing, thank you for your call, I have a hard time believing that Lankinen, I think that you could get by with Lankinen. I remember ahead of the deadline when Barry Trotz was on the show, and I asked about Lankinen, and it was the interview that Barry said that he was not going to let Tommy Novak walk for free. The one where he was like, if I don't get a deal with Novak, I'm going to trade him. Which maybe in hindsight they should have traded Novak anyways, but again, it's not a bad contract they signed Novak to, but that was kind of the line in the sand that Barry drew. Now, is that, was he bluffing? Was he going to keep Novak the whole time? I don't know. But that was kind of the interview. But in that interview, I asked him about Kevin Lankinen. And I said, because we had talked all about Saros, and this was when they had taken Saros off the block and about where Askarov was, and he said that he wants Askarov. He wanted to call Askarov up to play more games in the NHL and then send him back down to Milwaukee. And I asked about Lankinen, who was at the time a pending UFA and is now a UFA, and he basically got up, put his head over his heart, and was like, Kevin Lankinen is a great guy. He's a great goalie. Any team in the league, if you're listening, my number is 615-555-5555. Call me right now about Kevin Lankinen, because this is a guy that you need on your team to win. This is a guy, and I think he told the story about how when he was in Washington, they won the cup and Philip Grubauer started as the goalie, and then they went to Braden Holtby. Now, I don't think Kevin Lankinen is Braden Holtby by any stretch of the imagination, but that was kind of the. And I'm just thinking to myself, boy, I bet the Edmonton Oilers wish they had Kevin Lankinen on their team. Because that Pickard that they ran out there last night, he sucks.
He won.
I know he won, but that doesn't mean he's good. I mean, he sucks. So I think, again, you can do worse than Lankinen. Who would you take, Pickard and Skinner or Lankinen?
Probably Lankinen.
I take Lankinen.
Yeah.
I mean, if the Predators had found themselves in the situation that Vancouver was in the series, where Thatcher Demko got hurt after Game 1, let's say it was Saros that got hurt after Game 1, it's not like I would have been crying that Lankinen had to go in there and play. I would have said that it would have hurt you, but I mean, I
feel better about it than when he got hurt in the Colorado series.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, but you can go to war with Kevin Lankinen, but can you go to war with Kevin Lankinen for an entire season?
I mean, and make the playoffs might be a stretch. My biggest thing is I was trying to just think through the scenarios, in my head, and the whole if they decided to trade Saros this summer, you're saving what, $5 million for next season. It's not really a money saving move for next season.
Well, it is because again, let's say you re-sign Lankinen. And I think Lankinen made, $1.5 million bucks?
Yeah, you'll get, $4 million most at the max, maybe $3 million. What are you going to do with that?
So...
I mean, there's only... you can't find a big boy forward.
But, so Lankinen made, I think, 1.5 last year, right?
I think so.
Okay, so let's say you sign Lankinen and Askarov is the backup to Lankinen for next year. And they basically go 1A, 1B.
Okay.
Lankinen's probably making $2 million.
Probably.
You're
going to have to give him a
more.
raise if he's going to play more.
But you're not going to give him a raise to $3 million.
No.
And he's not going to get $3 million from anybody else in the league.
No.
So
you
an opportunity to play,
$2 million's
take.
fine. Yeah, fair. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then I'm really saving $4.5 million this year, but I'm saving, the $7, the $8 million for the next 8 years down the road.
Yeah, well, you're not saving that much this year. You're saving $5 million. Lankinen's already unrestricted, so he's off the board. Anyways, so you're taking the $5 million from Saros and you're giving it to Lankinen, and so that's some of your money gone already. And then you have your Askarov, and he's on an entry-level deal, and so you do that. And then what happens with Askarov? How much are you willing to pay him when his entry-level deal is over?
Well, how well is he playing?
That's what obviously that's completely unknown. But what if he's playing great? What are we willing to do then?
Then you give him the deal.
The deal you didn't want to give Saros?
Correct.
Okay.
If Askarov, again, the choices, to me, one of these two guys is going to end up 6 years from now as the starting goalie of the Nashville Predators, and we all know that. One of these two guys. If not, everybody's probably fired because it will mean that they went the wrong way with the wrong guy, and then they got stuck with Calvin Pickard, and they lost a bunch, and everybody got fired. So it's probably going to be one of these two guys 6 years from now. Well, 6 years from now, one of these two guys is going to be making a crap load of money. I just don't know which guy it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not going to be both. And so because you have to make the decision as to Saros being the goalie 6 years from now, this month, or I guess next month, you have to make it in the next month. You have to make that decision. And that's where I'm like, am I willing to make it with Saros right now? If the maturity questions are a concern, if this continues along the way as far as Askarov is concerned, and I think that, he's never going to be a real grown-up there, and I'm not willing to risk my career on it, then sign Saros and trade Askarov. But if you think that Askarov has the tools in the toolbox to be better than Saros, and you think that you just have to wait on it a little bit, then I'm willing to wait on it and let Kevin Lankinen play.
Okay, because I just heard, don't use the money you're giving, or use the money you would be giving to the goalie and give it to forwards.
Well, I'm talking about using the money, 4 years from now.
Okay, so, I mean, you have a little bit, maybe there's a little bit there, but there's very limited forwards you're going to be able to spend money on that gets you your big boy forward and answers your questions, just based straight off of money.
I still wonder, though, Mitch Marner's basically on the block right now, as is John Tavares, but John Tavares is old. I wonder who else is shaken from the tree. Like when we get truly to the offseason, like when we get to, everybody's eliminated, the cup it's either during the cup final or like 3 days after the cup final's over. Then all of a sudden it's, we're hearing that San Jose really wants to move Erik Karlsson. It's that kind of thing. Like, who else is out there? Again, I was stunned. I remember it like it was yesterday because I was doing the mid-morning show here, and I was trying to take a nap in the middle of the day, and I heard that PK Subban had been traded for Shea Weber, and I was like, holy crap. So I've always contended that the big boy forward is going to come from some trade of a guy who looks at his team like Johnny Hockey did a couple years ago and says, I'm not resigning here. So if you want to trade me, you trade me. If you want to keep me, you keep me, but I'm not resigning here. And it's like, okay, you got to guess right. Guess is the wrong word. You've got to scout right. You've got to know that, because everybody's, only available for one of four reasons and all of them are bad. Or you're going to end up with Matt Duchene again if you get it wrong. But that's where it's going to come from. And then you got to have the money at that point to be able to give it to him. One texter says, so if you sign Saros or go all in on Askarov, the idea here is to get the goalie that can steal games in the playoffs. I get that. But how important is that in the big picture if you don't have the horses to put the puck in the net? At the end of the day, you need goal scorers to win the cup. The other thing that we haven't talked a lot about is the return for Saros. Because, Willie's always like, well, what's the return? What's the return? What's the return? And I don't expect the return to be all that much. But I do expect it to be at least a first-round pick. And so does that help you to add to your kitty of first-round picks? You've got 2 next year. Does that help you again
helps.
when that guy comes out and, is wanting to move at teams? And, the other thing to keep in mind, too, is like Barry Trotz offered, I think it was, what did Pierre say, 4 first-round picks? 3 in Askarov to get Will Smith.
Trying to move up in the draft last year.
Well, what if one of these guys, again, that's drafted high is like, I'm not signing. I'm not, that's always, there's always something that shakes loose. I just don't know what it's going to be. So it's like, I can't give you an answer on it, but there is kind of a, it is one way or another. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. I want to talk about Twice Daily. That's right. I love Twice Daily. And you should love Twice Daily, too. You do know that when you go to Twice Daily, and they have just wonderful, stores all across the city, but when you go to Twice Daily, they make you that wrap right then and there. They can make you whatever. With that kiosk, you just order right there because they've got your cravings. And you can save on every visit. Stop in and get rewarded. And all you need to do is join the Twice Daily Rewards program to unlock special discount savings, enter their sweepstakes, and so much more. Try their new wraps, the Italian, the ham and cheddar, the turkey and Swiss, the Nashville hot chicken, and they're made to order with your favorite toppings. So when you download the Twice Daily app, you can order ahead. Or at Twice Daily, it's snack time all the time, and they've got favorites like chicken fingers, tater rounds, and new pretzels. Get to Twice Daily today. Twice Daily. What are you craving?
if you say, and maybe when Jared said it and he sort of thought about it, well, I guess since Barry, if he did talk to Barry, I don't want to fire. But then he doubled down. He didn't stop himself. He didn't. He just said, I still fire him. Like, Jared, if he talk with Nichols and Nichols talk to Barry and everything is like, all right, why are you firing people? Because it was done.
That is an illogical, irrational argument.
That makes no sense. That's like punishing your kid if they ask you to do something and you say yeah and they do it and then punishing them.
That was the midday show today. By the way, the midday show, they call themselves the Avengers now. You know, we've been talking about this station civil war regarding the goalie. And Derek has started calling them the Avengers, even though Caroline's not on their side and Ian is. So if they're the Avengers, Ian, I think, by the way, I think I need my own theme music too. Did you hear them playing their own theme music today?
No, I didn't.
So I'm guessing it's the theme to the Avengers. I'm not an Avengers guy. So they were playing like the theme, I guess it was the theme to the Avengers when they would talk about, we're the Avengers of this, station civil war. So I think I deserve my own theme music. Would you agree?
Sure.
Ian, give me my theme music, please. Thank you. Okay. Jared's got to tell the truth around here now. And let me just say this. Again, the take was this. Carl Taylor, the Milwaukee Admirals coach, is not playing Yaroslav Askarov in the playoffs because he went out of the crease and checked a guy and was bad in the first two games of their playoff series against the Scarbinis, whoever they were playing, and he put this meaningless goalie in there, and they won 3 games in a row. And I said that if I was Barry Trotz, that I would fire the coach if he wanted to take the prospect out. That's all I said. If I was Barry Trotz, I'd fire him. Now, I am perfectly aware of the fact that I think that my guess is that Carl Taylor thought that, hey, Askarov needs to be put on the bench. This is not working out. We've got to go with the other guy if we want to survive in this playoff series because apparently people give a rat's ass about who wins minor league hockey series. I don't. Apparently other people do. And he probably, again, picked up the phone and he probably called Barry Trotz or he called Scott Nickel, who then called Barry Trotz and said, I'm thinking about benching the goalie or I want to bench the goalie, but I need your blessing because he's the top prospect in the organization and he's maybe one of the most important players. And Barry probably said, do it. But again, my take is if I was Barry Trotz and he called my phone and said, I'm thinking about benching Askarov, I would say you do it and you're fired. Oh, but Jared, you got to understand, like he's, not right now. We gotta emotionally get him, but no, we're not playing Troy Grosneck. We got to figure out whether or not this guy's going to be the guy we go to long term or not. You do it, you're fired. So do you still want to do it? And my gut is he would say, no, he'll go ahead and play Askarov, grit his teeth, and do it. That's all I'm saying. If the minor league coach called me and said, I'm thinking about doing it, I say, do, you're fired. If he did it and he didn't call me, he'd be fired for not calling me. But again, as far as reality is concerned, I'm sure that Barry Trotz, endorsed that decision or at least okayed it. But again, I'm not Barry Trotz. And the whole point was, if I was Barry Trotz, this is what I would do. So no, I'm not walking that take back. Just the same way I read the page out of Chipper Jones' book when, he got his minor league coach fired because he convinced him, let me hit right-handed for a week and stop switch hitting so that I can get my average up in rookie ball so I'll feel better about myself. And everybody in the organization was like, what? No, you switch hit. Come on. One texter says, not Jared wanting someone fired. Again, my thing with this is, if you do it and you choose to do it, you didn't call me, you're fired. If you called me and asked for permission, you're not getting it. And if you're not getting my permission and then you do it, I don't care if I told you to, pee sitting down. If I'm the boss and you ask for my permission and I don't give it to you and then you do it, I'm going to fire you. I don't care what it is. One texter said, and let's be honest, the Milwaukee team ain't pumping out very many prospects. Amen. There are 3 guys that are on that team that I think could be, legitimate contributors to the Predators on a cup team. The goalie, Kimmel, and LaRue. Everybody else, filler. Parsonen, Tomasino. Well, Stasny's on that team, but Stasny's already on the big team, so, it's just so on and so forth there. One texter says, Glenn says, why do you have to trade the rookie if you sign Saros? I mean, what are you going to do? Have both of them on the team? There's only one goal. So if you imagine this. Now, I don't want to jump on David Poyle because he's not the general manager anymore, but he is the one that drafted Yaroslav Askarov. They knew they were transitioning to Saros at that point. Saros had already started and lost the bubble series against Arizona. It was clear that Rene was no longer the guy at that point. If you're transitioning to a new 25-year-old goalie or 24-year-old goalie or however old Saros was at that time, why in the hell would you draft a goalie with the 11th overall pick? But that's the situation you're in now. So if you sign Saros to a 7-year contract with a no move and you don't trade Askarov, then he's going to be the backup. So now you just used the 11th overall pick in a draft on a goalie who is your backup and took 5 years to develop. Woof.
It's interesting that Askarov kind of fell, in that draft. And he was rumored, he's very highly prospect, and he was rumored to go even higher than 11. And he kept falling, and, the Preds made that pick. But you don't see as many goalies get taken in the first round as much these days.
No, it's the running back position of hockey.
And so maybe he was falling for a reason, or for whatever, maybe some people saw it. Maybe it was a devalue of the position. Maybe it was something with Askarov himself.
It's like taking a guard
with
the 11th overall pick. A backup
But,
guard.
Yeah, I mean, he was, maybe projected to go top 5 at certain points leading up to the draft, and he fell all the way to 11, so.
And I get it. I understand. Well, we got to take the best player on the board. But again, if you're transitioning to your next franchise goalie, I mean, why would you draft the goalie with the 11th pick? Why would you do that? But then again, that was when they were all taking stupid sauce and thinking John Hines was the greatest coach who ever coached hockey. So who knows? 615-737-1025. More scheduling leaks are coming out surrounding the Titans. I don't know how I feel about this start. I'm in between. But Trevor Maddich had a kind of I thought, a very wise kind of approach that the Titans really have got to have this season. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So we are following kind of the latest with the scheduling leaks that have come out, where the Titans are playing, who they're playing. As of right now, here's what we have. Week 1 at Chicago. Week 2 at home versus the Jets. Week 3, Green Bay at home. Week 4 at Miami on Monday Night Football, though it is not the traditional Monday Night Football. It is the Fakakta, split ESPN, ABC doubleheader. Seahawks and Lions are on at the same time. I'm guessing you're on ESPN, they're on ABC. At Detroit, Week 8 versus Minnesota, Week 11. At Houston, Week 12. So one thing I find fascinating is that a lot of these leaks that have come out, it's because these other more popular teams have had their entire schedules leaked. And the Titans, I don't know why the Titans don't have their whole schedule leaked, but it's almost like, well, maybe the Titans just aren't popular enough that somebody at the league office that has the chutzpah to be able to leak this schedule, like they don't know anybody who roots for the Titans, so nobody's asking, hey, man, you got the Titans schedule? Or that covers the Titans. Or maybe the Titans are doing a great job of keeping their lips shut. Regardless, yesterday Trevor was on the program, and I asked him, how important is it that this team, given the situation where they are right now with kind of an uncertain future at quarterback, we know the immediate future, but we don't know the long-term future. How important is it when the schedule drops that they get a good draw off the jump? And here's what Trevor said.
Getting wins early create a habit, and they create a confidence. We can talk more about this another time, but there's always a big debate among sports psychologists. What comes first, confidence or success? And there are people that think you got to go in there and give them a big pep talk and build up their confidence, and then they'll be successful. And the answer is that's opposite of what it is. You've got to have small successes that lead to a small increase in confidence, which then leads to more successes, which leads to another small increase in confidence. The success comes before the confidence, and getting weaker teams early helps to build that.
I think he's dead on. I think that's with anything in life, not just sports. I think that you need success first to then give yourself confidence. I think the quarterback needs success to give everybody else confidence. Remember when the Titans drafted Will Levis? A lot of you didn't like it. A lot of you thought he sucked. Kentucky was terrible. Goes out the first game against the Falcons, drops about 6 bombs in there, and it's like, whoa, baby. Like, they might have a quarterback here. Had that game against the Steelers where he did some bad things, but he did some good things. And it was like, we got our guy. Well, that's also really important right now. That the Titans, for instance, when they get this baby rolling, then like if they go to Chicago and Will Levis throws the ball all over the yard on Caleb Williams' debut, hey, now we're starting to believe a little bit in this quarterback. So before I knew who the first 4 teams were, I said to myself this morning when I woke up, keep Buffalo away from early in the season. Keep Cincinnati away from early in the season. Keep Detroit on the road away from early in the season. But at the same time, I wanted New England early, and I'm not going to have New England in the first 4 weeks. I wanted J.J. McCarthy early. Not going to have him in the first 4 weeks. I wanted Washington early. Not going to have them. And then, we had Chris Sanders on the show, and Chris thinks they're going to lose at Chicago in week 1 because of just the level of excitement and, energy and the way that Chicago's going to be motivated. The first game of the Caleb Williams era. And then I'm like, damn. He's kind of right about that. It's like, I'm not saying load it up so that at the end of the year, if the Titans are 7-7 through 14 games with 3 games to go, that the last 3 games of the year are, Cincinnati, Buffalo, Houston, And now I'm not asking for that, but I do want easy early, the way the Chiefs in 2018, Mahomes' first year as a starter, played 4 non-playoff teams in their first 5 games. They were 5-0. They went to Foxborough on Sunday Night Football, lost 43-40, but it was like, okay, yeah, they're for real. And Mahomes is the man. And you need those kind of games. So when it comes to Chicago in week 1, I'm like, well, and Chris says some crazy stuff. Obviously I love him with all my heart, and they'll never change that opinion. But Chris Sanders does say a lot of crazy things. But Chris isn't wrong when he's talking about, hey, man, like, what you're going to get out of Chicago in week 1, that atmosphere is going to be electric. I don't even know, what the tickets would be for week 1, Titans at Bears, but because it's Caleb Williams' debut and because Caleb Williams is one of these, can't miss generational quarterback talents, I do get nervous. I do get very, very nervous about going to Chicago week 1. Plus, and a texter said this earlier today in the show, the Titans always suck in week 1. Have you noticed that, Ian? The Titans always lose week 1.
Yeah. I guess we need Wisenhunt back.
He won in week 1 and then didn't win in any other week.
Watch Caleb Williams pull a Mariota.
Trust me, I'm worried about that. Oh, my God. Could you imagine how mad the fan base would be if that happens?
Just boom, 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 4 touchdowns.
I mean, same way Levis started. And then they get some tape on you. And trust me, Caleb Williams week 1 I don't love because you're not going to have any tape on him to be able to say, okay, this is what they're going to want to do. These are the plays they're going to want to run. This is that makes me nervous. And then the other thing with the Jets, the Packers, and the Dolphins, really the Jets and the Packers, my thing is those teams might be good. Like the Jets, we'll get to the Jets in a second, but those teams might be good. The Jets do have a good defense. And while the coach is a total knucklehead and the offensive coordinator is a total schmo, Aaron Rodgers is good. And if Aaron Rodgers was their quarterback last year, it wouldn't have been the disaster that it was because he would have been throwing the ball to Garrett Wilson and not Zach Wilson. And so would they have made the playoffs? I don't know. Would they have won the division, been better than Buffalo? But I doubt it. But would they have won? Yeah, they'd have won. They'd have won some games. And so now he comes back. It's like, okay, they might be good. And with Green Bay, for most of last year, Green Bay did not look like a good team. And then at the end of the year, Jordan Love looked like a real quarterback. Then they got in the playoffs, and they freaking shoved it right up Dallas's keister. And that was a statement game. Again, we talk about what comes first, confidence or success. I mean, there is a lot of confidence right now around the country in Jordan Love. They're talking about Jordan Love at $40 million a year on a new contract, which if Jared Goff signed him for 53, maybe 40's not that much. But they're talking, I mean, I didn't know this time last year it was like, dude, can Jordan Love even play? And now we're talking $40 million a year for Jordan Love. And I could see this going either way with the Packers. I could see it be that, hey, Jordan Love's really not that good. And Matt LaFleur is a schmo. And so they've come back down to earth. Or what we saw out of Green Bay at the end of the year last year, where Green Bay was, they had a quarterback. Their defense was mean. They just took it right to the Cowboys and really took it to the 49ers, too, in the playoffs. If they could kick field goals, they might have been in the Super Bowl. So I'm like, the Packers might be pretty good. So Chicago's going to have all that energy, and it's going to be electric there. The Jets, Rodgers is most likely going to be in there. I have a Jets theory I want to get to in a little bit, but the Packers, I think they're probably good. I think they're probably like the Lions last year, where the Lions were really hot at the end of the 2022 season, and it carried over.
Good coach.
LaFleur.
I do think the Packers might be good.
And then the Dolphins. The Dolphins, I mean, I think the Dolphins are the biggest phony. I agree with you. I think the Packers might be pretty good.
Working on a new extension for Tua.
I give him $1 trillion. Now, he still might beat you.
The Jets might be, looks like they're coming off a short week, though. They'll be opening Monday Night Football.
Yeah, but at the
it's
same
so
time,
early in the year, it might not matter. So
I will say this, though. Go Jets week 1. against the 49ers because we always talk about wanting them to be fat and happy. You beat the 49ers, the defending NFC champions, in week 1, and the Jets will be pumping their chest, and TV will be, it's national TV will be talking about how great the Jets are for an entire week. And then everybody will be like, oh, yeah, they're going to kill the Titans. And then the Titans beat them in week 2. You know, I always love fat and happy. Titans smoked Tampa Bay week 1, 2015. I'm like, yeah, here we go. They got beat by Johnny Manziel in Cleveland in week 2. And then the Dolphins, you know, I don't take Tua seriously, but I do take Tyreek and Jalen Waddle seriously, so we'll keep them, you know, they're a good team. Now, I actually think the Dolphins early is pretty good because the Dolphins have, you know, last year they had 2 great pass rushers, Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, and both guys got hurt, and they got hurt. Chubb, I think, tore his ACL. Phillips tore his Achilles. I don't think those guys by week 4 of this year will be back to being Chubb and Phillips. Now, by December, they might be. So that is at least a little bit of kind of an advantage there. But the Dolphins are not going to overlook you on Monday Night Football after what happened last year with that great comeback that you had. It's like the beginning of the schedule. It's like I really wanted it to be, you know, Minnesota week 1, at Washington week 2, you know, whatever, bad teams. Now I'm kind of torn, but there is no Buffalo, there is no Cincinnati, there is no Houston, there is no, so at least I feel a little bit better about that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get to your phones on the schedule. 615-737-1025 Fitz later this hour here on the program. Coming up next here on the show, we'll get to your phones. Plus, I do have a Jets theory that makes me hate the fact that they're week 2. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
You said that you started to realize that a lot of what we take for granted is actually untrue, and some of this, by this I mean our civilization, is built on lies.
Yep.
You started to figure that out in high school. What do you think? But you also said you're in favor of just disclosing, like the government should tell everything it knows. If it did that, if we actually learned the truth about everything, various wars that we've had, assassinations that we've had, our economy, like what would happen? The government thinks things would fall apart. People would just be so overwhelmed and so disgusted that they wouldn't believe in the government. They would, I don't know, become nihilists or something. Like, what do you think would happen if we actually knew the truth about everything?
I don't think that's the worst thing. I mean, if you're making decisions based on what's the worst that could happen in this case, I think there'd be a ton of people actually connecting and finding common ground because there'd be a common enemy.
That was Aaron Rodgers with Tucker Carlson, 2 peas in a pod, talking about, hey, if the government would just let go of all the secrets, who really shot JFK, Aaron? You tell me. But I do have a football take connected to this, which is this. I hate that the Jets are week 2. And here's why I hate that the Jets are week 2. Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, in the year of the presidential election, it's going to be an absolute tire fire. Remember, we did not know that Aaron Rodgers was a complete and total kook. I mean, I knew because obviously, but we as a society did not know that Aaron Rodgers was a complete and total kook and a complete and total a-hole until the 2021 year when he lied about being vaccinated and, demanded a trade and caused all that drama and then did his McAfee shows and his Joe Rogan and his darkness retreat and all the other bull crap that comes with Aaron. We didn't know about all that. Like, we as a society did not know about Aaron Rodgers like that. Now it's well documented that Aaron Rodgers is a complete conspiracy theorist, he is the dumbest guy in the room who thinks he's the smartest guy. And we know that about Aaron. That's not going to work in New York. Like long term, in the year of a presidential election, again, the last time we had a presidential election, Aaron Rodgers kept his controversies to himself. Remember, there used to be a time where people thought, I never thought this because I know the brothers, but there used to be a time where people thought that Aaron Rodgers not speaking to his family was because Jordan Rodgers was some kind of fame whore who just wanted to be famous and trade off his brother's name, which couldn't be further from the truth. Jordan's a good man. And now that everybody knows Jordan, sees him calling SEC games, and, everyone's like, that's a normal guy right there. It's Aaron who's the total kook. So in New York, you've got Aaron Rodgers, a conspiracy theorist who was flirting with the idea of being Robert Kennedy Jr.'s vice presidential candidate. Boy, that wouldn't have been a distraction during the season. One of the dumbest owners in Woody Johnson, and Woody Johnson causes far more problems than he solves. A coach who is so in over his head in Robert Saleh that truly I think I could handle the pressure of New York better than he could. And an even dumber offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett. This is going to explode in beautiful and horrendous New York Jet fashion. But it won't be done by week 2. It's like when I was thinking about the Jets game on the schedule, I was thinking, please be in December. Because by December, Aaron Rodgers will have already set the world on fire. He will have already, nuked that building, and every controversy known to man will be festering in that place. And let's not forget the fact that, again, Aaron Rodgers' political leanings, and I don't even think Aaron Rodgers is like a Trump guy. I mean, I certainly think he's not a Biden guy, but I don't even think he's a Trump guy. But he's just, he's that doesn't really play well in New York. Yeah, you know what I mean? And so then the New York media, they put hooks into that stuff, and they again, like, I know this is going to be a disastrous season for the Jets. But it won't be by week 2. They'll be regular in week 2. You know, it's like the year that Freddie Kitchens coached the Browns. We all knew it was going to be a mess. We knew it was going to be embarrassing. It was going to be awful. But you played them week 1, and it was like, they're not going to be completely blown to smithereens by week 1. They'll still be a team. They'll think they're good. They'll think they can compete. They'll all these things in week 1. Now, the Titans still kicked their ass, but it wasn't until later in the year when when everything fell apart. And that's going to happen to the Jets this year. And it just sucks that, again, you're playing them early in the season and not late. I'd much rather have the Jets in November or December. What's the week of the presidential election? What is that? Probably like week 12, Ian?
Yeah, probably.
Let's play the Jets that week. Because you know Aaron's going to have his head up his tush. It's like, I remember, I don't know if you guys remember this, but the night before the Trump-Hillary Clinton election, Trump did a rally in New Hampshire. And he got up in front of everybody and was like, I've got a letter from Coach Belichick. And he was like talking about how Belichick thought he was the greatest guy ever. And I saw that and I'm like, there's no way that that's true. Like, there's no way that Bill Belichick, in the middle of a football season, in the middle of a football week, is endorsing a political candidate. Bill Belichick? The Mr. No Distractions? Again, I have no idea how Belichick votes, nor do I care. But just the idea that Bill would wade into this. Bill? And so when they came out and they said, oh, yeah, no, Bill said that. Bill wrote that letter to Trump. I thought, what happened to do your job, Bill Belichick? What happened to nothing's more important than the team? What happened to no distractions? What happened to... Well, apparently the players were so mad about that Brian Flores had to go to Belichick and say, hey, man, you got to address this with the team. And he was like, what? I have to address this with the team. It's like, yeah, the team's pissed. And it's like, I couldn't believe it. They lost the next week to Seattle. And I was shocked that Bill would let that kind of distraction come in. Aaron Rodgers is not averse to distractions the way Bill Belichick is. Or at least the way Bill Belichick supposedly was. So Aaron, around the presidential election in New York, oh my God, it's going to be a mess. So why can't you play him that week? As far as that's concerned. Boy, I tell you, the text line is not a pretty place right now with this Aaron Rodgers stuff. Brian says, Aaron Rodgers is infinitely smarter than me. I don't know about that. Ian, who would you put up there as smarts, me or Aaron Rodgers?
Not Rodgers.
I mean, I got to tell you, like, whatever. David in Arkansas says, what I don't want to see is the Titans playing the same team in the division twice within 3 weeks, which has been the case for the last few years. It feels like every year there's one team in the division that you play. You don't play them until November 17th. Then you play them on November 17th. Then you play somebody else. Then you play them again. I do feel like that's happened. So a couple of people have texted about this. Alex has texted this, and Ryan in Nashville has texted this about the Chicago Bears this year and how that is, they're equating that to the 2019 Browns. So Ryan says, and Alex said something similar, I think the opener at Chicago has a little 2019 Browns offseason hype media darling element to it, and the Titans can come in under the radar. Number one, the Titans had a veteran team in 2019 that really was about business and was established, and this Titans team's not with a second-year quarterback, and nobody knows if they're going to be good or not, or the direction of the team or anything like that with a new coach. Is Chicago really getting that much hype? Like,
well, Caleb Williams and their trades for Keenan Allen and a little bit of hype. I'd say it's mostly involving Caleb Williams.
But I don't see like anybody saying, like, people were talking about the Browns going to the Super Bowl.
All-star team kind of thing.
Do you remember that Jim Nantz and Tony Romo called that game? Like, I'm telling you right now, traditionally, and I know that they've done away kind of with the AFC and the NFC package, they've kind of done away with the AFC NFC package, but you still play most of your games on CBS, and the AFC Championship game is still on CBS, and the NFC Championship game is still on Fox. So I don't know if they've completely done away with it, but the way it used to be was if the AFC team was the road team, then the game was on CBS. So I am going to guess that this game with the Bears week 1 is on CBS. What broadcast crew are you getting? And keep in mind that CBS does not have a late game week 1 because they have the U.S. Open for tennis. What broadcast crew do you get?
At least number 2.
Well, I don't think you're getting Nance and Romo. And I don't. So you think that you're going to get Ian Eagle
you might get
and
a
Charles
number,
Davis week 2.
You might get a number 2 or 3 crew for that game, yeah. Just because it's Chicago.
Chicago, and it's Caleb Williams' debut,
Yeah.
and CBS doesn't have a late game.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I was thinking about that 2019 hype with the Browns, and I remember something on the guarantee list, and there was talk about the Browns in 2019, and the Titans going up there week 1.
The one thing, though, that I felt really I guaranteed the Titans were going to win. What I felt confident about in that game was that Baker Mayfield had a great rookie year. People thought about Baker after his first year the way they talk about C.J. Stroud right now. And I thought that was a little ridiculous, whereas with Stroud, I don't think it's ridiculous. But my thing with Baker was, okay, Dean Pease, this old veteran grizzled coach, is going to have this entire offseason to be able to dissect him on tape. So, who would I expect to have more tricks up the sleeve, Dean Pease or a second-year Baker Mayfield? And they really did screw with Baker in that game. Caleb Williams is not a second-year player. You don't have any NFL tape on him to be able to come up with a game plan that is, okay, now we see the tendencies, now we know, you don't have that. All right, here's your week 1 slate. And let's assume it's the traditional AFC, NFC, Fox, CBS. Who would you give better announcers to? Jags at Dolphins or Titans Bears?
Titans Bears. You'll have more eyeballs.
Patriots Bengals, Titans Bears.
That's a tough one. Cincinnati doesn't have many fans. The Patriots do.
But the Patriots suck.
But the Patriots aren't very good. Probably the Bears.
Texans Colts.
No.
Broncos Seahawks.
No.
Raiders at Chargers, probably a late game.
No fans there either.
Steelers Falcons.
No. No Atlanta.
You probably are getting Ian Eagle and Charles Davis. Honestly, you might be getting Jim Nance and Tony Romo.
It's possible.
Oh, God. Oh.
Well, the extra height might be a good thing for the Titans.
It might be. Fitz joins us next. His reaction to the first 4 games. What else we know about the schedule? We'll do that with Fitz here on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And let me tell all the fine folks out there to join Cromwell Media along with local athletes and musicians at Hermitage Golf Course on Tuesday, June 20th for the 615 Open. Make a difference while supporting Souls for Souls. Every $20 raised goes to a new pair of shoes for a local child experiencing homelessness. Sign up to player sponsor at 615open.com. Stillman and Company on schedule release day. I'm in a good mood, and let's give something away. B-Caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you will be going to go see Billy Currington at Ascend Amphitheater on May 18th. Good luck with that one. So the schedule is being released tonight. There are slow leaks that are starting to come out. As of right now, what we have with the Titans, at Chicago, week 1, Caleb Williams, Ian and I went through it. It may be a Jim Nantz, Tony Romo game. Though it may be one of the weeks that they just give Jim Nantz and Tony Romo off. I don't know. Jets week 2, Packers week 3, at the Dolphins on a split doubleheader on Monday Night Football week 4, at Detroit week 8, Minnesota week 11, Houston week 12. Jason Fitz joins us now on the program, as he always does. So, Fitz, I want to start with this, which is, what is the hype level surrounding the Chicago Bears? Because Chris Sanders is all worried about, the energy for Caleb Williams' first start and everything else. And then there are some Titan fans that are saying, no, this is good. This is the 2019 Browns hype level where it'll be too much hype going into week 1. And I'm like, is there a lot of, hype surrounding the Bears? Is there? What do you make of that?
Yeah, there is. Really? I think they've got the chance to be a wild card team. I think they're a much better football team today than they were 2 years ago, particularly. I feel bad for Justin Fields through all this because, look, I don't think Justin Fields is the answer, but, man, Caleb Williams is getting a much better opportunity to start than Justin Fields had when it comes to the talent around him. Plus, the other side of it, like, if you're the Titans, you're catching the Bears where you want to catch them at week 1. They're only going to get better. Like, I feel like, especially for guys like Caleb coming in, let's give it a few weeks before we, presume any C.J. Stroud-like rookie brilliance out of them. But I think the Bears take a big old leap. And by the time we get there, yeah, especially the division they're in and the way that everybody loves the Lions and the way everybody loves Jordan Love, like, I think the NFC North turns out to be one of the most competitive divisions in football this year. I think the Bears look like they're going to be really good. A lot of weapons, really going to have to come prepared for that. But I wouldn't want the Bears in week 15, 16. If I can get them week 1, that's much better.
So I actually worry about that because I think rookie quarterbacks play better in that first game. Mariota was great in his first game. Levis was great in his first game. It's like they don't have the tape on you. And so I don't like playing Caleb Williams week 1 because of that. Aaron Rodgers and the Jets week 2. I believe, Fitz, that Aaron Rodgers is going to blow that building up metaphorically, throughout the course of the year, especially given that it's a presidential election and Aaron has decided at this point in his career that distractions to the football team be damned. He's going to say and do whatever he wants, which takes me to the fact that I hate that you're getting the Jets in week 2. I actually think the Jets are going to go into the year thinking that they can be good and Aaron's going to be healthy-ish, or is it a good thing that it's week 2 given the injury Aaron's coming off of?
No, I actually agree with your take on the Jets overall this year. I think, you just asked if the Bears are being hyped. I think the Jets are the most overhyped team right now in the NFL. And everybody just presumes that Aaron Rodgers comes back. And I realize that Aaron has been able to come back, and this is part of the benefit of the doubt he gets for his career. But, man, at his age, coming off the Achilles, like, it's part of the reason I was slightly uncomfortable with Kirk Cousins. I'm even more uncomfortable in that situation with Aaron Rodgers. Like, their presumption is going to be, hey, we've got, some old guys that are going to be able to be there for us at the beginning of the season on the offensive line. But, man, I'd be worried about it if I'm the Jets. I'm worried about the beginning of that season. So I don't think it starts well for the Jets. And then to your point, when have we seen the Jets handle chaos well as an organization? Yeah. Like, if this thing starts 1-3, what proof do we have that there's anybody in the building that knows how to normalize it? So I think the Jets are a walking disaster. They're not going to be a good football team this year. So I'm actually with you on everything you said regarding the Jets.
Are the Titans week 4 at Miami, Monday Night Football? It's a split doubleheader. We assume the other game will be on ABC and the Titans will be on ESPN. Is that the only primetime game you think they'll get, or do you think they'll get more primetime games?
No, I think that's probably it. But if you're going to get Miami, look, you never want to get Miami early in the season. But when I saw the split doubleheader thing on a Monday night, at least you got a chance. The whole Heat thing, and I know some people think that's overblown, but I don't. When you start thinking about how hot it gets in that stadium, if you're the Dolphins, a big part of what your early home field season advantage is especially because they decided several years ago to unshade the visitors bench in that stadium. Guys just cook, right? So if you're going to get the Dolphins in Miami and you're going to get them early in the season, at least get them on Monday night so there's a chance that, it's hot and humid. Titans fans know hot and humid. Like, you can handle that. Like, I'll take that all day over a scorcher in the middle of the day. I think the Dolphins are going to be really interesting this year because they were truly a house of cards last year, the way they won against bad football teams. So I don't know particularly what to expect yet from Miami. I like that draw for the Titans getting them on Monday night, but I still think the Dolphins have a chance to be good.
I mean, when it comes to the schedule and the primetime games, one thing I do wonder kind of big picture is, this is not a traditional NFL schedule because they're doing a lot of different things, right? Wednesday, Christmas games, the game in Brazil, more international games. And I think what that does is that opens up more primetime availability. And I do wonder if that's bad for the NFL, Fitz, because while I don't think the way that it used to be, where it was, you have to install a satellite dish and pay $1 gazillion a year to watch the one team you want to watch, I don't think that that's, feasible in today's world. And I think it's a total pain in the ass. At the same time, it's like, do I really want football on 5 nights a week? And then when I do water down all these games, it's like I probably am going to get teams like the Titans on prime time when normally I wouldn't.
Look, I think one of the beauties of the league for years has been that you know exactly what the schedule looks like. So I'm not a fan of spreading this thing out over and over and over again. And to your point of the cost, I think Business Insider said it was going to be $865 this year. If you want to have every service that you would have to watch every NFL game this year, it's going to cost you about between $800 and $900 to have all of those services. So for football season, plus the NFL Sunday ticket. So they are absolutely pricing themselves into a situation where they just trust, right? It's a smart move for Netflix to have 2 games on Christmas Day because people are going to sit there with their families and watch it. There's no doubt about it. But the NFL has shown their aggressiveness. Look at the reports that they're going to put games on against the first round of the college football playoff. And the NFL is presumably trying to be a good broadcast partner with ESPN right now. It shows you that as a league, they simply don't care. They are going to add every window and every opportunity and every streaming service until at some point the teeter-totter sort of swings the opposite direction, and then maybe they'll peel it back. But every time I think, it's one too many windows, all they do is set historic ratings with the windows they have. So, this is just the new normal. We're so football starved that on Christmas Day, we would rather watch whether they're teams we care about or not. So I think it becomes truly interesting to see if there is a breaking point. Will we get to a spot where the fact that you're stuck with bad football teams late in the year on a streaming service finally causes all of this to walk back? I just don't know that we're close to that yet.
Jason Fitz is our guest. Does Will Levis have any national television appeal?
No, not yet. And look, I just think, this is where I come back to the conversation a lot that I had with Max Crosby when we got tattoos a few years ago at the draft and did an interview, and he kept talking about how you never forget the number. Nobody ever forgets the number next to your name for where you were drafted. And the funny thing is, to me, now you've combined to the fact that it's a second-round quarterback with a team that, frankly, nationally doesn't get a lot of attention. The only way that Will Levis is going to start to cut through to get national attention is if he comes out and he plays epic football. It's going to take being great. Right now, as I've said to you before, but I think it's even bigger right now. It's not that anybody's anti-Titans. It's just that the national media particularly is mostly Titan indifferent. When you look at the click rate on articles and videos about the team nationally compared to other things, doesn't resonate as much. When you look at the ratings, there isn't anybody flocking to turn around and say, oh my God, we got to talk about the Titans, right? And so how do you change that? Well, you change that by having a quarterback that everybody falls in love with. You change that by being an incredible football team. I don't know that we know either of those things yet. They might happen. I hope they happen for the Titans. It'd be great for Nashville, but right now, is anyone truly thinking that the Titans are nationally, the Titans are a massive threat to the NFL this year? The answer to that is no. And the reason why, I think, is because most people don't take Will Levis seriously. Let's see if he can change that mindset. But right now, nobody's sitting there planning NFL Live today saying, wait, we got to talk about Will Levis.
See, that's where I look at kind of the first 5 games of the season. And I'm a little torn about these first 4. At Chicago, they got a lot of hype. And I don't like playing a rookie quarterback with no tape. The Jets, they think they're going to be good, which means you're going to get one of their best shots in week 2. The Packers, week 3. The Packers, they were a ascending team at the end of the year last year, but how much of that is, going to be carried over into this year? Like, how real is Jordan Love? And then we talked about the Dolphins in week 4. I really wanted, Washington, who's on the schedule, I wanted them in the first 4. I wanted J.J. McCarthy in the first 4 because I felt like if the Titans could get off to a good start with Levis at quarterback, that could give a lot of confidence to the organization. I don't know if I'd say this first 4 is good for that, but I wouldn't say it's bad. Cincinnati's not in there. Buffalo's not in there. Detroit's not in there. That's on their schedule. Would you say that those first 4 games, as being reported right now, good for the Titans or bad for the Titans, getting off to a fast start with Will Levis at quarterback?
I think if they get off to a fast start, the good news is they will have beaten teams that people are paying attention to. It's almost like getting invited as a date to a party, but everybody ends up liking you. Like, people are going to pay attention to Caleb Williams week 1. People are going to pay attention to Aaron Rodgers no matter what happens. Jordan Love, you're right. I think it's really being under-talked about that. Jordan Love really had half of a season that was great. And all of a sudden we're anointing him as the next $50 million guy. Like, I think there's some pressure there. Everybody's going to have their eyes on them. And then everybody pays attention to Miami right now, especially with Tua. So there's an opportunity if you're the Titans and you come out, you start 3-1 against those teams, then, Will Levis plays really well. All of a sudden people are going to pay attention. They'll pay more attention nationally to that than they will if you beat up some bad teams early on in the season, because that'll be the narrative. But to your point, that's different. And look, if they start 2-2, then that's the worst thing you could be again, because 2-2 is just sort of in the mix, and that's where you're going to end up in these conversations, is barely in the mix. If the Titans want to make national headway early on, and that is the beginning of their season, they're going to have to start at least 3-1 for people to pay attention.
Last one for you, Jason Fitz. Is there anything that you've seen so far about the schedule, whether it's the Wednesday, Netflix game, whatever? Is there anything about the schedule that the NFL is doing that you hate?
I hate international games in general. I think it robs a fan base of a home game. I never want to see that, and it asks fans to try and travel halfway around the world when they already pay an arm and a leg for season tickets. I hate that.
See, that doesn't bother me as much as I don't want to watch a game at 9:30 in the morning.
I think the West Coast kid in me remembers doing that so much as a kid that doesn't bother me as much. But yeah, to your point, that if you live on the West Coast, now you're getting up and watching at 6:30 a.m. And keep an eye on something else that I hate is there were 4 international games announced today, right? 4 or 5, I don't remember. But all of the international games announced today were announced with the NFL Network, which means, as far as I know, as far as I've heard, ESPN Plus is still getting their own exclusive game. So if it's not an international game, does that mean ESPN Plus is going to get a random Monday night game? All of this, having to have this service and that service, I'm a purist at the end of the day, man. There's something special to me about sitting around with a bunch of friends at a sports bar watching football, and it's getting more and more complicated to do that. So I hate that too.
Jason Fitz, as always on our program. Fitz, I agree with you about all the streaming services and just how redonkulous that is, but it's a lot worse in the other sports. So with that being said,
Truth.
I at least feel that way. Fitz, great stuff. Enjoy schedule release day.
Appreciate you, brother.
Yep, Jason Fitz on our program as always. I will say this. Did you see baseball? If you want to watch now, they had a Sunday morning 11 a.m. first pitch game, a national exclusive Peacock game. And Peacock was like, yeah, we don't want to pay for that anymore. And so now it's going to the Roku channel. Whenever the Braves are on that, I will not watch because I'm not buying the Roku channel. I already got enough apps. I already pay enough money. I didn't even like the NFL putting games on Netflix. I have Netflix. And I don't like the idea of the NFL putting games on Netflix because then it's if they'll go to Netflix, where won't they go? I've already put a playoff game on Peacock. Good Lord. 615-737-1025. So Paul Koharski, Ian, I don't want to say I'm putting words in his mouth.
Okay.
Because I don't think I'm putting words in his mouth. I'm taking his take that he had today. He thinks Rand Carthon, Brian Callahan, and Will Levis are all going to fail based upon the take that he had this morning. Is that fair?
That might be a little bit of a stretch.
Okay, well, I think it is fair, and we'll do that take next, and it is a doozy. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Do we think the Titans get any primetime games this year? I mean, they play Green Bay. They play the Jets.
Well, they'll get a Thursday, right? They'll get a Thursday.
They'll get a Thursday.
I think the Thursday rule is gone.
Okay.
But, I mean, they'll get one or two. They're not getting
Titans, Jags.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're not on Sunday night at all. I certainly don't think that I won't be surprised if Nissan Stadium's not on prime time again.
One Thursday. That's my prediction.
Okay.
Again.
One Thursday.
In its lifetime. But
wow. Again, it's lifetime. You're saying for 3 seasons there will be no primetime home games?
That's probably a little
No,
bold.
I'll put it on the record.
That's probably a little bold.
I smoke weed all the time.
That was this morning on Robbie and Rex Road. Let me just say this. If that's what happens, if Paul Kaharski's right, and I think at the end Paul realized, like, wait a minute, that was a really hot take. Like the idea that the Titans won't have a home nationally televised game for 3 seasons. If that happens, everybody's fired. Rand Carthon's fired. Brian Callahan's fired. Will Levis is fired. Everybody is fired if that happens. Because, again, if you're a good team, like when the Titans are good, and we know the Titans are a small market team, although I really don't think Nashville is as small of a market as some of these other cities, but the Titans are considered, because it's a 20-year franchise and it's not the same as some of these other teams that have the Packers and the Steelers and But if the Titans are good, they get about 4 primetime games a year. Now, the amount of primetime games everybody gets is going to go up because the NFL keeps adding extra bullcrap games. Like, we're going to play extra international games. Well, that takes away what would be a normal primetime game. And so now we have to fill Thursday night football that week, so let's stick something else in there. So if you're good, you should get about 4 primetime games a year. If you're good and you're in New York, you get like 7. So it's a little different, but you still should get 4. So that means that PK thinks, and again, I think at the end he realized how ridiculous that was, that the Titans will not get a home nationally televised game for 3 years. That means that they're going to be bad for 3 years. If they're bad for 3 years, everybody's fired. And I know people, there goes Jared again. Ian, I guarantee you there are going to be some people that are going to say like, Jared's, there he goes after Rand Carthon again. There he goes firing people again.
Probably.
But that's not what I mean. What I mean by that is you're bad for 3 years. This is the NFL. Everybody gets fired if you're bad for 3 years. If they're not putting home nationally televised games on there. So I heard that this morning, and I was like, whoa, that was a smoking hot take. Now, Paul did walk it back a little bit there at the end, being like, maybe it's But it wasn't a full retraction, was it, Ian?
Well, I don't know. Did he continue on after?
Not really. They transitioned to talking about something else.
Well,
I forget what it was they were talking about, but it was, I don't know. I mean, when Joe starts doing that, his impression of Paul, which I think is terrible, by the way, when he starts doing that, they kind of move to whatever.
Uh-huh.
It's the idea that there's not going to be another nationally televised game at old Nissan Stadium is absurd. And if that does happen, everybody's fired. And it's not a Jared's firing people thing. It's if you're bad for 3 straight years, this is the NFL. Nobody gets to be bad for 3 straight years. Not even Jason Garrett got to be bad for 3 straight years. Paul's replied.
Oh, okay. Goody.
Paul said, pretty sure I backed off of it if you listen to the whole thing. Was thinking of it as he uses a word I can't use on the radio, as a bad venue/environment for thing more than a bad team thing. They don't care about the environment. This is the NFL. This is not college game day where it's like, we want to have the most people behind us and get rowdy and roll. They don't care about that. I mean, the best atmosphere in the NFL is in Denver. You want to know when they play primetime games in Denver? When the Broncos are good. They're not playing. I mean, again, I haven't looked at the Broncos schedule leak. I'm sure they have a couple of primetime games, but I highly doubt that they're putting the Broncos on a lot in primetime, given the fact that Bo Nix is their quarterback and their team, I think we all think, kind of stinks. One texter says they won't get one for a year and a half. That'll give them time to talk up the new stadium. Dude, again, when it comes to the new stadium, the Titans want to be good now. Like, I was thinking about this today, maybe yesterday and today, because the Titans are unveiling what they're calling Titans House, which is kind of like the new pick your PSL thing. I don't know. It seems way too complicated for me to understand. Maybe I'm an idiot. I don't know. But they're unveiling kind of they're picking the PSLs and whatnot. And I'm like, they want to be good now, because now is when they're really asking for money. You know, now is the, hey, here's going to be the, if they're bad, it's going to be harder and harder to get people excited about the new stadium. So they need to be good now. Like, they need to be getting good. Like, they need Levis to be the guy. Because if he's not, you're going to know next year, you're going to start over again next year. And then it's going to be another 2 years with another guy, and then you're in the stadium. And if you don't have a quarterback then and you're bad, it's not going to be good. So they need to get this figured out now. 615-737-1025, Jared versus Joe. We got the schedule. We got the goalie stuff. We got all kinds of stuff to get into. Although Joe and I have actually been kind of aligned on some takes lately. But Jared versus Joe is next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Schedule release day, Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live at the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Here on, again, schedule release day, what we know right now, the Titans, week 1 at Chicago, week 2 versus the Jets, week 3 Packers at home, week 4 at Miami, Monday Night Football, though it's a split doubleheader, so I don't know, how excited, national, yes, but there's another game at the same time, so make of that what you will. At Detroit, week 8, Minnesota, week 11, at Houston, week 12. Ian, do we have any other leaks?
I don't think so.
Okay. Caleb Williams' debut against the Titans, and Ian and I think that Jim Nantz and Tony Romo might be doing that game, which is a shocker to me. I didn't think the Titans would get a Jim Nantz or a Tony Romo game this year, and they may get one in week 1. Caroline is here. How are you, Caroline?
I am doing great. How are you doing?
Outstanding. With that, let's get to Jared versus Joe.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexrode. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game.
Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville.
All right, so both of you led my co-host, Derek Mason, to start a civil war between the station with all your comments about J.C. Latham's measurements and his butt size and his hand size. So it's not really much of a question as much as it is, Jared, you said he looks like a right tackle. Joe, you say he looks like a guard. So Derek got mad at both of you, and then both of you got mad at each other. So let's hash it out here. Jared, you go first.
He's built like a right tackle. There is a distinctive difference between right tackles and left tackles. The top 5 right tackles in the NFL weigh 333 pounds on average. The top left tackles, top 5 paid left tackles, weigh 321 pounds. Which side of that equation is J.C. Latham on? The heavier side, which is the right tackle side. The last, between 2021 and 2023, there were 3 top 10 tackles taken that are right tackles. There are 3 top 10 tackles that are left tackles. The right tackles average 335 pounds. The left tackles average 315. Which one is J.C. Latham at 342 closer to? He's closer to that of a right tackle. He's got broader shoulders. He's got a bigger tush. He is as Nick Saban said at AL.com, a prototypical right tackle. And I know what Joe's going to say. He's going to say that, there's no difference anymore between right and left tackles. The game has changed. But last time I checked, the football field is still 100 yards, and the quarterback's blind side for a right-handed quarterback is still the left tackle position. So I'm not saying J.C. Latham can't play left tackle, and I think a lot of people are getting confused with me saying he's built like a right tackle, saying that he can't do it. Charles Barkley's 6'4". He's not built to play the post in the NBA, but he did it very well. But he's built like a right tackle. He's built like the other right tackles. He's got arms like a right tackle. He's got weight like a right tackle. He's built like a right tackle. That's all I said. The end.
I wasn't saying anything when I talked about him looking like a guard other than it was just an offhand observation. I mean, although some people did during the process say he could be someone who bumps into guard, but that was purely a visual observation. And again, the guy whose name came to mind was Roger Saffold. That's who he reminded me of when I saw him, because Roger Saffold, as anybody knows, is a massive human, just stands out even on an NFL field. And also, when he was right, he could move that big body awfully well. So that's all I was saying. So I think Derek, I guess I thought maybe Jared was saying a little bit more in terms of that's what he should play, but I definitely wasn't. And Derek got mad at both of us. As far as the whole right tackle, left tackle thing, I'm not saying there's nothing to it. I think it was put well this morning on our show. It's still, the blind side, of course, matters. I mean, you take a snap and shotgun, you see everything, but you still are going to turn your back when you set up to throw. So the blind side matters, but that does matter less. I mean, you have to admit that. It does not matter. It is not the traditional way that I think Jared is talking about it now, the way it was 15 years ago, 20
so
years
then
ago.
why between 2021 and 2023? 2021 and 2023 is not 20 years ago. So why in that stretch, top 10 tackles that play the right side, like Darnell Wright, they weigh 335 pounds on average? Sewell, Darnell Wright, and I'm trying to think of who the other right tackle was off the top of my head. And the left tackles, Paris Johnson Jr. and Ike Ekwonu and Charles Cross averaged 315. Evan Neal was the other right tackle. Those guys averaged 335, and the guys on the left side averaged 313. And those guys were picked between 21 and 23. They weren't picked 25 years ago when Floyd was a GM.
Yeah, I'm really proud of you for doing the math, Jared. That's really great. Good job adding up weights and averaging them. But it
doesn't matter. So you're saying it doesn't matter?
No, but it certainly doesn't matter as much as you clearly think it does. Are you telling me that you don't think it's changed? That you don't think left and right tackle are more interchangeable now than they used to be?
I think left and right tackle are the same in the way they used to be 10 years ago. I think some guys can play both that are swing tackle type players. And then I think there are some guys that are left tackles and are built like left tackles. And I think there are some guys that are built like right tackles. And I don't know if J.C. Latham has the athleticism to be able to play left tackle. But what matters is whether or not he can do it. And there are some guys that are athletic enough to do it and guys that aren't. And the right tackle position is the same. Like Darnell Wright's not a left tackle. Can we all agree on that?
He played better at right tackle.
Well, he's a right tackle.
That's true. He does play right tackle in the NFL.
Like he's not a left tackle.
Okay.
That's because of how
you're assigning way much of this to weight. I think that's the issue here.
But to me, it's the build. Like Taylor Lewan's never going to weigh 342 pounds.
Yeah, and Taylor Lewan and that's another thing I think. Maybe this is happening to you, but Taylor Lewan, obviously being in this market as left tackle for a long time, he was extraordinary in terms of leanness and athleticism among left tackles in the NFL. So I think when people think of left tackle and think of him, then it's like, yeah, that's it. That's the more ballerina-like left tackle, whereas Jack Conklin was the big bruising right tackle. Again, I say that there were plenty of teams in the NFL who were interested in Jack Conklin as a left tackle. He believed he was a left tackle. He came here. They drafted him as a right tackle. It worked out. But, he's 6'6", 6'7", 305 pounds. This is not he's just an example that you use. It really doesn't work. Now, compared to Lewan, was he as lean as Lewan? Was he as athletic as Lewan? No. So I don't really even know what we're arguing about anymore.
Well, like Michael Roos was a really good left tackle, too. He was 313. Again, those guys, it's one thing to say, like, okay, 320, 316, 308. It's another thing to say 342. There's one guy, Jordan Mailata, who plays at that weight on the left side. And so when there's one guy that's that big that's playing that position, to me, it's the same as saying that Charles, and I keep using Barkley because there's no disputing that Barkley does not have a post player's build at 6'4".
Well,
right?
He doesn't have the height. Well, he doesn't have the height. He
part
certainly
of the build.
Doesn't have a guard build.
I mean, that's true, too. But again, because Barkley was just special, he could battle it out with Alonzo Mourning and battle it out with Shaq and battle it out with those guys. Patrick Ewing. Not everybody could do that. So maybe Latham can play left tackle. I'm not saying he can't. But to sit there and say that, there's not a clear difference in today's NFL between a right tackle build and a left tackle build is just factually inaccurate. And I'm giving you the information that tells you the difference. And you're like, oh, yeah, you're just averaging weights. Yes, because there's a difference.
Just to help you not pile more fact errors into our conversations, Charles Barkley never played center, dude. Charles Barkley did not battle with Patrick Ewing in the post. He played the 3 or the 4, and still at the 4, you're right.
Barkley was banging down in the post, down low in the 4. You know as well as I do, Barkley was a post player in the NBA.
Jared, Barkley was a three-point shooting, all-around forward, playmaker who had the ball in his hands out front way more than he had it in the post. He led the league in rebounding. He was an incredible rebounder. He did not play the 5.
Again, he was banging around inside. That's how he and Shaq didn't get in that fight because he was guarding somebody else and Shaq was with somebody else.
I promise you that Charles Barkley was not in a lineup in which he was the 5 guarding Shaq. I mean, if you want to bet me money on it, we can put it down right now.
Okay. Caroline, what's next?
All right, as of today, post-draft, mid-free agency, now that we're getting a clearer idea of what the schedules are looking like, how would you rank kind of like the power rankings in the AFC South? Joe, you go first.
Okay, well, the Houston Texans, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and then it's funny because, we're obviously doing some stuff on the schedule tonight and everything, so I've had to, do some predicting and whatnot, and I mean, the Titans and Colts to me are neck and neck. They even have, and it's funny, they even both have the 21st ranked strength of schedule going into this season. I find them to be very close, but I'll go Titans 3 because I actually feel like we know a little bit more positive stuff about their quarterback than we do about the Colts, including just my real concern about Anthony Richardson staying in one piece. So I'll give the Titans the slight edge over the Colts for 3.
I think I'll put the Colts number 2, but I think that the difference between 2 and 4 is not very strong. I think Jacksonville's on the descend. I think the decline. I think Jacksonville, I think there are real problems the way they ended last year, and I think they're getting to a point to where now people are on the hot seat. Doug Peterson probably enters this year on the hot seat. They overachieved year 1, and that kind of, blew the hype machine up. And then all of a sudden last year, they started off okay, and they really fell apart. And so now Calvin Ridley's not there, and they still got the same offensive line issues, though Anton Harrison, he might be okay at right tackle for them. But, they fired their entire defensive staff, and I'm really not sure that Trevor Lawrence is that good. And so they're going to get a second place schedule. I don't know exactly who finished second or third, given the fact that they were all right there at the end of the year. I think Jacksonville finished second. So they're going to get a second place schedule, and there's going to be high expectations on Lawrence, and I just don't believe in Lawrence to deliver. Indianapolis I put second because, I really think they took some swings in the draft, maybe good or bad. Latu's got the neck injury, and I really didn't think that the A.D. Mitchell off-the-field stuff was that big of a deal, but clearly it was, considering he fell to where he fell. Indianapolis, they've got receivers. I've loved Richardson coming out. I'll put them ahead of the Titans right now, and I'll put Jacksonville ahead of the Titans, but if you told me Jacksonville crashed and burned, finishing last place, and fired Doug Peterson, I wouldn't be surprised by that because I'm just not a believer in Lawrence, and they have high expectations this year. But I think Houston is every bit the contender. So I guess I'm ranking it Houston, Indy, Jacksonville, Tennessee. But I think Houston is a legitimate AFC contender, and I think Houston is the clear number 1 in this division.
So one of the things I really like about the Jags in a shameless attempt to pander to the judges is Brian Thomas. I really like that pick. I like.
Yeah. We can't be bothered.
Yeah. No, but I really do like that addition, and I think he's going to make big plays for them. I don't necessarily. I'm not all in on the Jags. I'm not a huge buyer on the Jags, and I'm very interested with Trevor Lawrence. I don't know. I go back and forth with him, but I still right now would have to put him as the number 2 quarterback in this division until further notice. And so that's kind of where I land with the Jags at 2.
I just don't I think that Lawrence is the kind of guy who if you gave him a good team, I think Lawrence, Caroline, I think we talked about this at one point, when the Lawrence hype was getting out of control. And I said, I think his career is going to be a lot closer to Ryan Tannehill's than it is to Joe Burrow's.
I think everybody assumed that he was going to be the next Joe Burrow getting to the Super Bowl in year 2. But Jacksonville's going to get to the point where they're going to have to pay Trevor Lawrence close to $50 million a year.
Oh, close. They're going to have to pay him 55. Jared Goff's 53. He's the next guy. And they're going to have to pay him. What they'll do is they'll blame Doug Peterson. They'll fire Doug Peterson. They'll go bring in a new coach, and they'll pay
fire
Lawrence.
him too.
But even the Brian Thomas Jr. pick, which I really did like for them, all that really does is replace Calvin Ridley. Like, it doesn't necessarily make them better. Like, because, Thomas Jr. is a down-the-field guy, and he's going to have to develop a little bit. I'm not drinking any Jacksonville Kool-Aid. That said, though, with Houston, I really do. Remember last year how there was all the same hype about Jacksonville because they got to the divisional round of the playoffs, and I was like, don't buy the hype. I am buying the hype on Houston. I mean,
and they
Houston,
got better.
Yeah, and they got better. I mean, they got better. I'm buying the hype on Houston. Okay, more Jared versus Joe to continue next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Caroline.
Hearing a lot of Traylon Burks trade. I don't want to say buzz, but just conversation. We saw it on ESPN.com. Bill Barnwell put an article out. So I'll ask you, Jared, you go first. What would you need to get in return to trade Traylon Burks?
Okay, so I saw the Barnwell article in which Barnwell suggests the Titans eat $6 of the $8 million owed to Burks over the next 2 years and receive a 6th round pick?
In 2026?
A 26 6th round pick, and they eat $6 of the $8 million. I mean, that's ridiculous. I think his value as a backup receiver, like the idea that, oh, somebody gets hurt, put Burks in the game, or the idea of the value of, well, let's see if the new coaching staff can get something out of him, which, again, I don't think is a big value at all. But I think that value far exceeds an extra $2 million and a sixth rounder 2 years from now. I think for Burks, if we were talking about a third-round pick in next year's draft and me eating the money, then a top 100 pick in next year's draft, then we could talk about it. But I probably wouldn't eat any money if I wasn't getting a top 100 pick, because then again, there is still value. It's not big value, but there's still value to having a backup, in case somebody gets hurt. I think the thing with Burks when I think about trading Burks at this point, what I think is a comparable player at another position on a team that has a logjam at that position. So similarly to how the Titans don't have a starting spot for Burks, there may be a team that has a swing tackle that's their fourth tackle that they're going to release around roster cutdown date, that they're like, well, we don't have a spot for this guy on this team, but he would be your third tackle, or in the case of the Titans, maybe the second tackle. He'll be your second or third tackle, so then you trade him for Burks the way the Titans traded Dorial Green-Beckham for Dennis Kelly. So I think that maybe an inside linebacker could be something like that, an extra defensive back. But the idea of a sixth-round pick, I mean, that's nothing. That's, even though Joe will debate this, a bag of footballs. I mean, that is absolutely nothing, and I'm eating the money. I mean, at that point, just keep Burks on the team and see if he'll be a backup the way that Derek Mason and Chris Sanders were backups in 2000, and when Kevin Dyson got hurt and Yancey Thigpen got hurt and Carl Pickens went off the reservation, they got in the lineup and they excelled. So, I mean, I thought the Barnwell thing was ridiculous. With Burks, again, we're either talking, a fourth-round pick in next year's draft and you take the $8 million, or I want, a comparable player that's probably a backup-ish type player, but is certainly better than what's on the roster now at one of the positions like inside backer or tackle that they could use help at.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely insane with Barnwell's suggestion there, eating that much money and then getting a sixth. I mean, to me, to really simplify it, I'd have to have at least a fourth. I think at least a fourth. I don't totally hate what Jared's talking about there, like the DGB trade for Dennis Kelly turned out to be really valuable for the Titans. So if it's something like that, a safety maybe, I don't know, something in a position of need. But if we're talking draft capital, I'm not eating a cent, and I'm taking a fourth at worst because, yes, there is value. There's value in the reality that someone's going to get hurt, the fact that your fourth receiver does matter and will get some snaps, and if used correctly in this new offense with a lot of changes that I'm sure are refreshing and exciting for him, he could get in and he could get weaved in and make some plays. And if he does figure it out, which I wouldn't bet a lot of money on, but I also wouldn't bet I'm not betting a lot of money on him being a complete bust either and flopping out of the league. And Ridley's 29, so I think there's a lot more value actually in having him on the team this year than just.
Oh, we lost Joe. Poor Joe. And I was wondering if he was making a serious point or not.
You were wondering?
Well, I mean, his point was there's more value to the. I look at Burks like this. Chris Sanders, and Derek Mason didn't do a whole lot before everybody got hurt in 2000. Chris had one catch for 18 yards and then didn't get a target in week 2. And then all of a sudden everybody gets hurt and now it's 7 targets in week 3. And with Derek, I mean, he was inactive at points in the 99 season at the very beginning of the year. And then in 2000, everybody gets hurt, and he sets an NFL record for all-purpose yards. Derek did not have a target through the first 2 weeks of the season. Everybody gets hurt. 5 catches on 5 targets. in the case of Chris Sanders, he was on the all-rookie team and had 100 targets his second year in the league. Then he had a bad 97 season, had 20 targets in 98. Like, he had completely fallen out of favor. But what does Chris always say, Ian, Caroline? What does he always say? You have two choices.
Don't get bitter, get better.
You got two choices. Get better or get bitter. And so, like, and I think Chris has the kind of mentality that, like, he can sit on the bench and not pout and, still be productive when his time is called. I don't know if Burks can do that or not. That's what Burks is going to have to do. I don't think there's like a role for Burks if everybody's healthy. I think when they say, oh, we'll find a role for him, I think that's great. The problem is that there's only one football, and there's all these other guys that are making more money and are more reliable. So I don't really see a role for Burks, except in case somebody gets hurt. And that's, again, if he, has the right attitude by getting better and not bitter. Joe.
Okay. I don't really have a retort to that. I do think that, again, like, think about who have the Titans had as like a fourth, even like a, Taywan Taylor, Khalif Raymond. So, well, sure, but I mean, like, here and there they'd make a big play, right? I mean,
Raymond's not a wolf, but Taylor's a wolf.
Yeah, well, third-round pick wolf. But point being, I think those guys at different times were right around that, right? Like of the fourth, fifth receiver, and still here and there you could get them in and get something out of them.
You know what I do wonder, though, when it comes to Burks? On the surface, like if we had to say who's the better wide receiver, although, Joe is the wrong person to debate this with. If we were to say on the surface who's the better wide receiver, Treylon Burks or Nick Westbrook-Akine, what would most people say?
Burks.
But as far as, like, productivity is concerned, NWI is more reliable than Burks and more,
for sure,
productive than Burks. And, like, I played a cut that Charlie Weiss had where he was talking about how he brought up Tom Brady and young quarterbacks, and it's like, do what they do well. Don't try to, put your whole offense in there and tell them what to do. And so I watched a highlight reel of Levis to try to figure out, like, okay, what can they do that Levis does well? And I was shocked how many highlights were of Nick Westbrook-Akine. And it's like, we talk about Ridley and Hopkins and Boyd and Burks, but doesn't it just feel like NWI is going to find his way on the field this year somehow?
He's inevitable.
Well,
but he's reliable.
If somebody gets, yeah, exactly. If somebody gets hurt, that's the thing. I think right now he'd probably be the guy who would step in. But I think for a special role as a fourth receiver, to me, Burks has got to be more appealing to this staff because he's got more physical ability.
Yeah, he is more talented, but we shall see. Caroline, what's next?
All right, Joe, you go first. If Yaroslav Askarov does not play in net, should Carl Taylor be fired?
What? Is that a Jared take? I mean, you asked me as if that's a Jared take. I missed that one. If that indeed is, no. Carl Taylor's not going rogue. What? Jared? Do you think Carl Taylor's off the reservation? Like, I don't care what you say, Barry.
Leroy Jenkins.
Leroy Jenkins. Yeah. Okay. So here's my official take. I said, if I was Barry Trotz, so this is a very important thing for people to hear. If I was Barry Trotz and Carl Taylor called me and said he wanted to bench Yaroslav Askarov, I would say, if you do that, you're fired. I.e., no, we're not benching him. I don't care. We got to see how he responds to the adversity, not sit his ass on the bench and him not play. That's all I said.
See, you're missing something here. The benching is adversity for him to overcome. So I'm 100% giving autonomy to my AHL coach to bench him. I'm also having a conversation saying, okay, so after X number of games, I think we see how he responds, right? The benching is fine. That's good adversity to go through. I just don't want to see these guys go through the entire playoff run if they go on a run and ride Groznick the whole way. I mean, at some point, I think you have to see how he responds.
Well, the thing that was ridiculous, I stand by this with saying that if I was Barry Trotz, because I believe that Carl Taylor probably did call Barry Trotz, and Barry Trotz probably did say, okay, do it. So, I mean, in that case, and At that point, Barry Trotz has endorsed or co-signed the decision, so of course he's not going to fire Carl Taylor. I'm saying if I'm Barry Trotz, you're not benching the goalie. Like, that's just how I see it. The thing that I don't understand, and I don't know how Carolina feels about this.
Him.
What's that?
Well, then he wouldn't bench him, so you also wouldn't fire him.
Right. Again, that's the point. The point is that if I was in charge, we're not benching him. But obviously I'm not in charge. But the thing that I would say, and I think I know how Joe feels about this, but I think, Joe, I think you and I might be the only people that actually, like, understand this. This is, and Caroline, I don't include you in this because I don't know how you feel about this, but you had to get on Robbie a little bit about this, and I was stunned to hear this come out of that young man's mouth. He's like a year younger than me, but I was stunned to hear this come out of his mouth when he was like, well, but it's the playoffs. I'm like, so? It's the minor league playoffs. The playoffs? What? And it's like Willie and Chris Mason and Alex Darty and all these other people are like, well, I mean, Carl Taylor's got to do what's in the best interest of the Milwaukee Admirals to win games. No! The job of the minor league coach is to develop the players for the major league team to win. The job of the major league coach is to do whatever it takes to win. It's like, I am stunned by how many people are like, well, I understand that you want to play Askarov and develop them, but, it's the playoffs, right? You got to do what it takes to win. In the minors? What? I seriously. Caroline, please tell me you don't believe that. You do not believe that the minor league coach's job is to win.
No. The minor league coach's job is to develop players. But I do understand the perspective of if the goalie's not winning you games, then you don't get to play more games to develop other players.
Yeah, but like the Milwaukee Admirals have really, as far as developing is concerned, it's Askarov and Kimmel. And LaRue maybe a little bit, but like the Parsonens and the Tomasinos and no. Like we're talking about.
I don't think it's fair to put Parsonen and Tomasino in the same conversation.
Yeah, I wouldn't dismiss Parson right now. In fact, I wouldn't totally dismiss Tomasino, but I have my doubts about him. I generally agree with you, Jared. I generally agree. Yes. I mean, it's about player development. Now, look, is there value in these guys winning together and having more hockey and being in situations? Sure there is.
There's no value in them learning to win together as the Milwaukee Admirals is going to translate to them winning as the Nashville Predators.
No, there's value in them being in high
Who won the AHL championship last year, Joe?
Yeah, again.
Was it the Rangers AHL team?
You're taking some huge, stupid leap. It's not what I'm saying. There's value in players having success together, playing together on lines that have success, that are in pressure moments. It's the highest pressure you can give a guy before he gets to the NHL is to give him something to AHL. But that's part of player development. A decision that is for the team winning over anything about player development, no, that's asinine.
And yet, when Robbie said that to you, Joe, my jaw hit the floor. No disrespect, but I expect that out of I expect that out of the Chris Masons of the world. And I love Chris, and I mean it. But when Robbie said it to you, Joe, well, it's the playoffs, I was like, oh, my God. We're the only people on the planet that understand the point.
Yeah, we're not going to prioritize the Milwaukee Admirals over the Nashville Predators. I think we can all agree with that.
Unbelievable. But I do think, again, I don't want to speak for anybody here. It's just my interpretation. I do think that, David Poyle back at, I believe that those guys believe, hey, it's important that the Admirals win. And I just don't believe that. I just don't care. I'm sorry. I don't think it matters.
Well, it's like Barry Trotz talking about serial winners, right? Okay, right. So if you have winning habits and you see it translate on the ice, then yeah, there's value, but it's just it can never take priority over individuals and what's happening with them.
Yeah, some dudes are winners. Joe Burrow's a winner. And so, it's oh, yeah, he's always going to win. So he won in college, and he's winning in the NFL, and he's a winner. But then there's, Stetson Bennett, right? I'm not sitting there saying, hey, Stetson Bennett won 2 championships. I mean, Stetson Bennett, he's the man. He should be playing every NFL game because he wins. You know what I mean?
D-Mace says that.
D-Mace wants to play Stetson Bennett?
He loves Stetson Bennett.
I mean, Dan Marino fell to 28 because he never won. He didn't win at Pittsburgh, and he ended up not winning a Super Bowl. So make of that what you will. Caroline, who wins this week?
The Carl Taylor take really is a doozy, I will say. So to the texter in the text line that set the odds of the winner today at Joe minus 250, it's a good call. Joe wins today.
Again, I'm just saying, if I was Barry Trotz and you wanted to sit the goalie, and I would say you do it, you're fired. And I stand by it. The goalie be playing. All of you guys that have Troy Grossneck in the net, you guys be really excited about that. Troy,
but it's for the Calder Cup, Jared.
That is true. Because it's a direct correlation that who wins the Calder Cup then wins the Stanley Cup. Unfortunately,
it's science.
The Milwaukee Admirals have been apparently, I think the Milwaukee, I mean, I don't want to get into it because I'll get in trouble. People get mad at me. Great stuff, guys. Always good to chat.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
615-737-1025. Speaking of the goalie situation for the Predators, though we weren't really talking about that, I did have the opportunity to catch up with Pekka Rinne today. Pekka said some interesting stuff. That's next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Today at Bridgestone Arena, Pecorine was informed he'd be inducted this summer into the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame. And afterwards, I had a chance to catch up with Pecorine. We talked about that. We talked about the goalie situation and more. All right, first off, Pecorine, congratulations being named to the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame. How many honors is this now for you since you've retired from the NHL?
I mean, let's count. It's the jersey, statue, and now this. I mean, it's pretty unreal.
So what exactly, this role you're in, this scouting role, this development, what exactly is your job now with the Predators?
Well, during the season, I mean, it's kind of a combination of both. I do bunch of scouting, just identifying next year's draft and getting to know, especially this year, the 06 class and late 05 born goalies. But at the same time, I have a couple of Juha Jatkola in Finland, playing in Finland, who's our prospect, and then Konstantin Volkov, who's playing in Moscow in KHL. So those guys are kind of on my plate. And then in North America, Jason Barron, who's the goalie coach for Milwaukee Admirals, he's taking care of the North American prospects. So, and then we split also. We kind of cross our information and just try. But biggest thing is trying to build a relationship. And I try to take it, especially with these younger guys. When we draft them, I almost try to be a mentor and trying to kind of be there, just let them know that I'm here for you and try to work with their goalie coaches as well, because that's also like a sensitive area that you don't want to step on anybody's toes. So you gotta, at the same time, you gotta work with their own goalie coaches, and so you're not gonna be just the one that you're coming and bowl everything out of your way. That I'm coming from NHL and I exactly. So I'm just trying to. But that's been cool, and I like that there's a kind of mixture of those two kind of job descriptions, I guess.
Becca, let's start with Saros. I want to talk about the two goalies, but you've been in a situation where you wanted to be a Predator. You decided to be a Predator for your entire career, but the negotiations are the negotiations. And I kind of wonder, given where he is in his career, knowing that there is somebody else in the pipeline there, if you were in that situation, would that affect you of saying, hey, I want to get a deal done, or hey, I've got to do what's in the best interest of me? Or how would you approach, the uncomfortable business side of things?
I think you got to think about yourself and your family, where you feel most comfortable. That at least that's how I was thinking about it when I was going through it. And of course, there's also the sports side of it. But I always had a big belief in our team and our organization, and it was, at the time, it was the best decision for me and for my family to stay here. And I had no question in my mind. It was a dream come true, and I just have a feeling that it's the same thing for Jews. Hopefully everything goes smooth, but obviously I can't speak for Jussi, but I it's everybody kind of handles their own way. But I know and Jussi really well, and what kind of person he is, and what kind of things he values, and he's such a humble, down to earth guy that he's already kind of setting his roots here as a pro athlete. So I have no question in my head that he wants to be here. And
do you think if you were in his spot and you signed an extension that you would understand that, hey, Askarov's coming up behind me the way he kind of came up, but it was later in your career that he was coming up behind you. How does a goalie look at that? Because there's only one starting goalie per team.
It's funny though, but we are also competitive, that you also want that challenge, that kind of driving force behind that. I'm 100% sure that Jussi was able to extend my career, because that made me work hardest that I've ever worked. You know,
So even though you guys were good friends, it certainly lit a fire under your ass.
Yeah, like exactly, because like you recognize talent, like you know who's good, like, you know, as a player, you know who's gonna like take your spot or anything like that. So that was, for me, the best thing that happened was when Jussi came over, and eventually he took my job. But you need to have a little bit of that behind you, you know, like in the back of your head, that every day, like you gotta come to work. You gotta, you know, there's other guy breathing on your neck, and that's you know, one day that's gonna happen. But right now we're in an interesting situation in our organization, because, you know, we want to keep Jussi here, but then we also have Aski coming up from the minors, and he's getting to an age where, you know, he's improving every single year, and he's showing more and more that he's you know, ready for a bigger role. And so I think it's great thing for our organization, but it's a good thing for Jussi too, like, you know.
So in the case of Askarov, you know, there's a lot of talk about, okay, is he ready now? He's 21 years old. I do wonder this from your perspective, because you spent time in Milwaukee. How important is the extra time in Milwaukee as opposed to, well, he's doing well in Milwaukee, now bring him up here and make him the starting goalie for the Predators?
It's so important. Like, at the time when you're a player, like, I played 3 years in Milwaukee, and I thought after my first year that I'm ready to play in the NHL, and then I got sent down, played my second year, and I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm ready. And then I got sent down the third time, and it was so hard, but looking back, it was so good for me. I got to play all those 3 years as a number one goalie, and got to play a lot, got to make a lot of mistakes, got it out of my system, and when I finally got up, I was already older than, you know, than these guys at the time, but like Aski or, but I was ready. So, like, I don't know, like, my career could have been totally different without those years in Milwaukee. So, but I understand totally that it can be really challenging as a player too. Like, you know, just to take the news, for example, after training camp that you're gonna get sent down. It feels like your world is crashing, and you work all this time to, you know, get yourself ready, and you think you've gonna pay your dues, and you've done everything, and you're ready to go, and then, you know, but I wish at that age you would have a little bit of a crystal ball, and you could, you know, age travel, time travel a little bit, and
so that you would know that one day I'll be in the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame, so it'll be okay.
No, but exactly. Then you look back and you're like, oh my God, like, it was so important for me to play those years, and I think for Aski, I really hope that he understands that at the moment.
Last one for you. This is kind of a complicated thing here in Nashville that we discuss a lot. But I think the 2017 run was in large part because of you, you know, in terms of the Chicago series and Anaheim series and the stealing games. UC has not won a playoff series yet. And so I do wonder, as a goalie, how personally do you take winning in the playoffs and that, as opposed to, well, it's a team sport, and how much does the goalie put that on themselves?
I mean, a lot, and I, you know, knowing Jussi's personality too, like, he's so hard on himself, and he takes a lot of ownership on this team, and you know, it doesn't matter the game, he always thinks that he could have been the difference, and I know how he feels. So, and he has the mentality of a winner. So I have no doubt in my head that those days are still ahead when he's gonna steal a series for us, and all of a sudden, you know, gets on a roll. But yeah, I mean, I feel like you know, those days are still ahead.
Pekka, congratulations once again, and get back to scouting because the draft's coming up here.
Thanks, man.
We have another schedule leak. The Titans at Bills week 7. So that means at Chicago week 1, versus the Jets week 2, Packers week 3 at home, at Miami on Monday Night Football split doubleheader in week 4, Buffalo on the road week 7, at Detroit week 8. Don't like that, Buffalo and Detroit back-to-back on the road. Minnesota week 11 at Houston week 12. That's all we got so far. Tonight the whole thing will be released. I do want to take a second here as we kind of wrap up here. It was announced today that Mickey Ryan, a longtime host over across the street at 104.5, has decided his contract was running out. He'd been offered, according to what they said, and he's decided to take his career in another direction. And as far as the business and things are concerned, I'm not getting into what their business is over there. But even though we do compete with one another, I just want people to know the immense amount of respect that I have for both Mickey Ryan, the host, and Mickey Ryan, the guy. And I don't know what the future holds for Mickey. I know this. I've known the guy for 9 years now, however long it's been, and he's an absolutely great person. He is as honorable as they come. And so whatever is next in his life, I'm really rooting for him and wishing the absolute best for Mickey Ryan. Wherever he ends up, however he ends up, certainly shouldn't be a stranger to anybody. He's a great guy, and he did a great job for a long time. He's a great host. All right, Force Company's next. The NHL playoffs at 6:30. Stillman and Company. We'll see you tomorrow, too.